It is Tuesday night. East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around. It's time for Spartan Mag Live. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in. We're talking Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball, a little recruiting. Going to take questions from the Magosphere, the Maggers out there, subscribers to SpartanMag.com. They have posted questions over at the Underground Bunker message board, SpartanMag.com. We appreciate that they do that and they're involved. They have questions. They'll also be asking questions here at in the live chat area. We will be taking those questions as well. Might even turn on the phone lines. Get the phone lines rolling. Have a good time. Sorry, we're 10 minutes late again. Just trying to get some things together. Trying to get some overlays together and some other things. Just try to make the operation look a little bit better. It's not like I spend all day on this, ladies and gentlemen. I was over at Tom Izzo's press conference earlier today around noon. Also heard from Michigan State's wrestling coach. They had a big win they had wins over Purdue and Indiana this weekend. They've got the number 1 ranked Nittany Lions coming into Michigan State this weekend. They're not going to beat Penn State, but it'll be fun to have number 1 ranked Penn State in town wrestling against the Spartans Sunday, 1 o'clock. So he was at the press conference. And then all of a sudden, Amir Speed announced he's committing to Michigan State. We will talk about that tonight. Defensive back from Georgia. I was putting that story together, trying to put the video together of Tom Izzo from his press conference. It's here on the YouTube channel, so also over at SpartanMag.com. Next thing I knew, it was about 4:30 and practice was starting. I was still at Breslin, went around the corner, watched the end of practice. A little bit different with Michigan State coming off a loss. Did some interviews after that. Marcus Bingham spoke with us, as well as A.J. Hogard and one or two other players. Came home, got something to eat, started to get this thing together. Boom, it's time to go on the air. Trying to do a little bit of, I wanted to look over your questions before I got to them here. So next thing you know, it's 9:05 and I'm late being on the air. But it's good to have things to do and it's good to have questions to go over. Didn't quite get everything finished that I wanted to, but that's the way it is. It's busy time right now. It's January 18th. Spring semester has started at Michigan State. 32 balmy degrees out there today, warm 32. It's going to be down in the teens the next few days, which is good for the ice if you're an outdoor iceman. Anyway, come on in. Glad to have you here. We've got some questions to pour over. Go ahead and put some questions over in the chat area as well. I've got to find that chat area. Here it is. Looks like the audio is working, so we're going to get right to it. With questions, what do we have here? Yeah, we'll get to some news in a minute. But first of all, we'll go to question number 1 from, let's see, that's the wrong one. Here we go. Question number 1. And if you're wondering what all this is, I publish a website called SpartanMag.com. It's the Michigan State website. Been around since the advent of the internet. It is the Rivals.com website covering Michigan State. And over at the Underground Bunker message board, which is the premium message board aligned with SpartanMag.com, the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative on Michigan State sports. If it's happening in Michigan State sports, you'll find out about it there first, and we will be discussing it there for as long as people want to discuss it. Had some coaching changes this week. People still talking about that. Coaching vacancy still going on at Michigan State. We're still talking about that. Let me turn down my levels a little bit. I think we topped out there a little bit. But I invited SpartanMag.com subscribers to post questions over at the Underground Bunker message board. And I've got a few of those questions right now. Question number 1 from M. Johnson from Parts Unknown. M. Johnson did not say where he's from. That's a personal foul on M. Johnson. We need to know where you're from. Just gives us a little bit more of a feel and a scope for the Spartan Magdom that's out there. M. Johnson says, what is your too early prediction for the starting 11 on both sides of the ball next year? You know, we had this question last week. Somebody last week wanted an entire 2 deep. They wanted like 44 players. I went over that a little bit. We will probably be answering this question all spring and all summer, right up until August 28th into September 1st, whenever that opening game is played next year. I'm not sure when. We'll be doing this. Won't be the last time we do this, and it's going to change. When we get into spring practice, spring game, these things will change a little bit. But my too early forecast, starting on 22 for Michigan State next year, Michigan State football Spartans. Quarterback, you may have heard of him, Peyton Thorne. going to start on defense. I'm going to start in the defensive backfield. At corner, Ronald Williams, I think. What, he start 10 games this year at corner? Did pretty good. Was getting better as the year went on. But he's got some size at about 6'2". 6'2 and a half. Could he move to safety? I've not heard the coaches talk about that, but wouldn't surprise me because Michigan State's got some corners. And that guy's a big corner. Let me look up one other thing real quickly before we go any further. That's how up-to-date we are on these things. Up-to-date is one way to say it. Speed of the pants is another way. Gosh, I'll tell you what I just looked up. Because I was talking to an insider about this a moment ago. Not an insider, but he's an insider. At the other corner position, you can look at Kimbrough. You can look at Chuck Brantley. Marquis Lowry came in, did a few things. Amir Speed just announced today he's transferring from Georgia to Michigan State University. Let's go to free safety. I'm going to go Xavier Henderson back for his 5th year. Going to be a good one. If he's healthy all year, he'll be at least second team all Big Ten in my opinion. Now, the other corner and the other safety. The other safety, strong safety, was Darius Snow. The bowl game did a pretty good job. I saw Mel Tucker last Friday at the Michigan High School Football Coaches Association convention. He spoke at the event. We had video of him speaking here in the YouTube channel in the hallway outside his speaking engagement. And I tell you what, Mel Tucker was pretty awesome that day. It was like Mel Tucker in concert. It's pretty good. Before I get to the 22 one more time, I'm going to remind people over at the SpartanMag.com message board that this is going on, and I'll give them a link so we can get more of those rascals in here. If this were a commercial enterprise, we would go to commercial right now, but we don't have commercials. One of these days, maybe we will, but we've not looked into that too deeply. One of these days, I'd like to have this. I tell you what, Mel Tucker was pretty awesome. I'd like to do this at a remote location someday and drive some business for some people. So let me know if you're interested in something like that. I'll bring Spartan Mag Live to your place of business anywhere in the tri-state area. All right, I'm going to post this and invite maggers. I'll put a link up. This type of thing I would like to have done before I came on the air, but it was already too late, so I had to put it up there. You know what I'm saying? So we'll go with that. Throw this up on Twitter also. That's the way it is, people. It is primitive, and it is live. We're glad you're here. Via Spartan Mag Live. Join us. Here, link. Oops. It's a semicolon instead of a colon. There we go. Boom. All right. Now we got that out of the way. Thanks for waiting. Appreciate it. Glad to have people filing in. I know Michigan State fans are pretty excited right now. Big game coming up this Friday night. Michigan State at Wisconsin. Number 8 ranked Wisconsin. 14-2. We'll talk about that a little bit later also. But first of all, let's get back to these. My way too early starting lineup for Michigan State football for 2022. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Glad to have you here. We're up over 5,000 subscribers right now. We're going to keep that thing going. I want 5,500 by Groundhog Day. 5,500 by Groundhog Day. Make it happen. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate the support. All right. I got Ronald Williams at one corner, probably. Xavier Henderson at safety. Now, Darius Snow, I asked Mel Tucker when I saw him. We were interviewing him at the Michigan High School Football Coaches Association convention about Darius Snow. He played strong safety in the second half of that blowout loss at Ohio State. And then he played strong safety all day in the Peach Bowl against Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh was down a couple of quarterbacks, so it's not like they were really going to threaten you deep over and over and over. I asked Mel Tucker how Darius Snow looked there at safety. He said, pretty good, looked good. Didn't really expand on it. So I'm not really sure if Darius Snow projects as a safety for next year or a nickel, which he started at nickel for the last 2/3 of the season, overtook Michael Dowell for that position. Angelo Gross was a nickel in 2020, played safety in 2021, kind of had trouble morphing into that position. He's a hard-nosed tackler. I think they're thinking, and I think that Gross is a little bit better closer to the ball, closer to the line of scrimmage, excellent tackler, maybe not a back-end type of deep ball judgment guy. gave it a whirl this year with Gross. Didn't have his best season, but he's a guy that's going to try and give you a good effort, and they can find a place for him somewhere. And I asked Mel Tucker, how did Snow do? How does that whole safety nickel situation look going forward with Snow and Gross? And he said Snow did pretty well, but he didn't really expand on what he's thinking for those two positions. So we'll have to wait. We'll have some more press conferences prior to spring practice, get a little bit of an idea of that going forward in the future. I think they're both capable. Gross, deep ball judgment. Could he be better if he had another shot at it? Probably so. Is he good enough for what they need back there? That's what they're trying to hammer out. Darius Snow, does he have the speed they need back there? I mean, he's a thumper. He's good close to the line of scrimmage too. In actuality, Darius Snow and Angelo Gross are both nickel, close to the ball type of nickel slot linebacker, hybrid slot corner star guys. They're both that. Neither one of them is a pure safety. They love both of those guys, but if you could trade one and bring in a safety, would that be better? A true safety? Maybe, but they love both of those guys. So, what do I have at safety? If I take this long on every question, and we're never going to get done with this, but that's just the way we roll. That's the problem we have. It's an addiction over at SpartanMag.com. People thinking about Michigan State football all year, especially after that season this year, 11-2, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl champions. So that's why we're talking football, hot stove league on a January night, 2022. So what I'm getting at, you got Amir Speed. You got Ronald Williams. Amir Speed's coming in at corner. Wrote about him. Article over at SpartanMag.com right now. 6'3", 211. That's the key right there. 6'3", 211. Could that guy be a safety? He's got the size to do it. He tackled well this year. I didn't watch Georgia all year. I looked up his Pro Football Focus grades for the year, and every week he tackled well. Amir Speed. I'm putting the cart ahead of the horse here a little bit. Let's go ahead and go over there. Let's go to that horse. I'm saving this for labor. Let's go ahead and do it. Where's it at? There he is, Amir Speed. 6'3", 211. Corner, originally from Jacksonville, Florida. Announced today he's transferring to Michigan State. He's a grad transfer, sixth-year player. And he'll be enrolling. He's enrolling right now, spring semester. He'll be here for winter conditioning, spring practice. All right, so Michigan State's in with Amir Speed. Mel Tucker was defensive coordinator when Amir Speed signed with Georgia out of Jacksonville, Florida back in 2017, I think it was. That year, Michigan State also recruited him. Harlan Barnett was co-defensive coordinator at Michigan State at the time, and Michigan State had Amir Speed on campus for an official visit in October of 2016 for the homecoming loss against Northwestern. Michigan State gave up 52 points that day, lost en route to having that terrible season in 2016. So he signs with Georgia. No surprise there. Mel Tucker was recruiter of the year by Rivals.com that year, and Mel Tucker had a hand in bringing him aboard. Coached him for a couple of years. They were excited about him. Played a little bit as a true freshman in 2017. Played in 11 games, I think, as a true freshman. A little less in 2018. Tucker left in 2019. So he was only there for 2 years with Tucker. Am I getting my numbers right? Is he a fifth-year senior now? Anyway, Harlan Barnett, of course, went to Florida State. Now he's back at Michigan State. So Amir Speed goes in the portal. Michigan State shows interest. Both gentlemen have recruited him in the past, both Mel Tucker and Harlan Barnett, and that's something that Amir Speed said on social media today. He said he would always look forward to being coached by Mel Tucker and Harlan Barnett. Now he gets a chance to do that. Gets a chance to go to Michigan State, a top 10 program in 2021, with a good chance to start at corner, maybe. All right, so they've had great talent at Georgia for a long time, right? And he was expected to start this year for Georgia. Georgia went out and got a transfer from Clemson this year. He was first team all ACC corner at Clemson. His name escapes me for a moment. So they bring him in. And Speed and that gentleman were the starters for the first 3 games. So he started the first 3 games. And let me get the name of this other gentleman. Some of you know it, but I've not. I don't have the brain I used to have. I don't know if I ever had the brain I ever had. The guy's name was Darian Kendrick, the guy that transferred in from Clemson. Then Kelee Ringo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kelee Ringo. Ringo was the number 2 corner in the country, and he's coming out of Arizona. And he signed with Georgia, was injured, didn't play in 2020. This year became healthy, so 2021. He was the number 7 player in the country in 2020. Became healthy, and he's a corner. And then he was competing with speed. So Amir Speed started the first 3 games, and then I got a phone call coming in here. Then he lost the job to I think we're gonna have Big Movie a little bit later. Excited about that. All right, so then he lost the job to Ringo, and Ringo became the starter, kind of a freak athlete type of guy. So Amir Speed, I watched a little bit. The South Carolina game was the 3rd game of the year that I think he started, but Ringo played a little bit more in that game. Now, later in the year against Missouri, Amir Speed played more snaps in that game than Ringo did. Amir Speed lost his starting job in game 4 or 5, and then he went down with an ankle injury for 2 weeks, came back, and by that time, Kendrick and Ringo were solidified as the starting corners for the best defense in the country. And Speed continued to play on special teams. He saw 5 snaps in the semifinal victory over Michigan. So he's hanging around a guy that had started earlier in the year, just a ton of talent on that field. I watched a couple of plays in the South Carolina game. He gave up a couple of deep balls that day, so I want to go back and see what that looked like. He was in press coverage against a guy named Van out of South Carolina, who's a good receiver, kind of a Jaden Reed type of guy. He's up in press coverage. They're running hurry up. They snap the ball at 9 seconds, gets an offhand jam on him. The guy gets a half a step down the sideline. The guy catches it deep, and Speed shows speed. Bigger guy running him down tackle. It's a gain of 61 on his watch, but the hip turn looked pretty good. And the closing speed looked pretty good for a big dude running down that sideline. Now, later in that game, the same guy, Van, outside release, press coverage, down the left sideline, touchdown, 36 yards. Same thing, press coverage, offhand jam. Maybe didn't get enough of a jam. The way Harlan Barnett coaches it, he's going to want more contact on that thing. Guy got a half step, turned. Again, the hips looked good. Hips were good. Acceleration pretty good. A lot of you people, when you watch defensive backs, you get frustrated because the ball arrives and they've not looked back for the ball. Well, a lot of people teach it that you don't look back unless the hands light up or until you're in phase. Well, he wasn't quite caught up yet and looked back for the ball at about the 15-yard line. Then the ball came, guy catches it, touchdown. That's like exhibit A for don't look back too early. A lot of you guys get mad at defensive backs for not looking back. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. But the hip turn was quick. The closing speed was good. Deep ball judgment, would Barnett have taught him to do that differently? Maybe so. But the point is, 6'3", 211 with quick hips. And his tackling was good all year. Pro Football Focus had him tackling with good grades all year. So I'm wondering, 6'3", 211, can that guy play safety? And if he plays safety, the guys all know what they're doing, and based on different formations and motions, you can rock and roll the guys a little bit, and you could put that safety up in the slot and turn him loose man-to-man on somebody just because he's a safety. You know, Michigan State this year tried to put safeties on people in the slot and man-to-man. Didn't work out so well. We've talked about Gross against the kid from East Lansing. I forget his name, number 1. I forget his name. Good player, but had trouble with him. Next week, they put Henderson a little bit in the slot, and then they got to where they didn't want to do that a whole lot. If you have a cat like this as a safety, and you can roll him up into press coverage, not all the time, just to give a different look here and there, that can give you some versatility, some weaponry. 6'3", 211. It's a big corner. Ronald Williams is 6'2". He's over 200 pounds. A couple of big corners. That's what Mel Tucker's talking about. That's what Harlan Barnett likes. But Michigan State's a little bit weak at safety right now, right? Can one of those guys become a safety? And they've got a few corners. Can you start Henderson and Speed at safety and go Williams and Kimbrough at corner? In order to do all those things, you have to get everybody on the same page, of course, first and foremost. But he brings some talent, and he brings a frame. Now, I just blew a lot of information on Amir Speed that I was saved up because there's questions that are going to be coming up later on in the mailbag portion of SpartanMag Live, and I already kind of like scattershot that all over the target, but I couldn't help it because the question is who's going to be starting, and I kind of jumped way ahead of it. So there I spent about, 5 minutes on defensive backfield. How long are we going to be here, people? How long do we have the room? I don't know. What is this, Sun Records? We got to get out of the studio in, an hour and a half? All right, so linebacker, you got Cal Haladay coming back, freshman All-American. The other linebacker, Quavaris Crouch, he's still in the program. He's on the mend. You got Aaron Brule coming in, transferred in from Mississippi State. I'm going to put Angelo Gross there at the nickel. So Haladay, I'm going to say Haladay and Crouch. Go with what we know, right? Defensive line, Chris Bogle, transferred in from Florida. Let's put him at defensive end. Got Slade and Barrow, defensive tackle. The other defensive end, I'll go with Piotrowski for right now. They're still in the portal, maybe looking for another defensive end. Let's go with Piotrowski. Some other people need to come around, but you're asking for a too early starting lineup. That's what I'll go with. Offensive side of the ball. Wide receiver, let's go Trey Mosley, Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman. Saw Keon Coleman at basketball practice today. He and Malik Carr in practice attire, out on the court, playing scout team defense for the first time today. I assume they did it yesterday also. Keon Coleman, Keon Coleman was getting run all over the place by Max Christie going through the screens in Michigan State's play. So it was an education for Keon Coleman on how to run through those screens, and he looks like a guy who's just beginning to do it. But when he pushes the button and tries to go fast, he can really move. Now he's got a long way to go and a lot to learn on defense to begin with. Forget about him scoring 60 points in a high school game. That was lower level. Michigan State's de-recruiting Pierre Brooks right now, trying to get him to be a role guy. These these football players would be ultimate role people, like a very minute role, defense rebounding. Malik Carr was in there bouncing around a little bit with Julius Marble and Marcus Bingham playing some post defense, and was rugged in there. You can tell he's not used to elevating or trying to jump at his new tight end weight, so he can't jump like he used to. But it's just day one or day two with those guys, but they're putting in some effort on defense on the scout team. I was mentioning that if they were ever going to help, initially it's going to be as a defensive player like Mike Keebler was for the 2010 Final Four team. After Kalen Lucas went down with an injury, Lucius became the point guard, and they just kind of eked it out in the Final Four, and Keebler had to play some minutes, a former walk-on, a senior, but he was a guy with quick feet and some reach and some length. But more importantly, Keebler had been in the program for 3 or 4 years and understood Michigan State's base defensive principles. So he was able to apply those with a pretty good athletic body. Now, these guys have very good / great athletic bodies with Coleman, but they have no idea about Michigan State's defensive principles. And there have been very, very good basketball players in the past that didn't really ever catch on to Michigan State's defensive principles, and they ended up out of the program. So it's a long way to go. But anyway, they were on the court today. I got Keon Coleman starting at wide receiver. It's too early. Let's throw it out there. As far as, let me check something else real quick. Yeah. At tight end, as far as we know, Tyler Hunt still in the program. I didn't get a chance to ask Mel Tucker about that. We've not heard anything. I think he can come back for a 6th year. I asked around a little bit to some insiders, and as far as they know, I think Tyler Hunt's back. Or he's going to be back. I'm not reporting that as news. You're asking me for my too early starting lineup for next year. I got Tyler Hunt at tight end. Offensive line, left guard, J.D. Duplain. Saw some video today of workouts started. It's day 1 of winter football workouts today at Michigan State, and J.D. Duplain was in there pushing some weight around. Center, Nick Samak, he has to play better than he did in the bowl game. He's not, he played early in his career and has kind of plateaued a little bit. That's why he never quite overtook Matt Allen the 2nd or 3rd time around. Samak's got to get done now. He's got to take it up a notch. I got Samak at center. Right guard, I got Matt Carrick. Right tackle, let's go with Spencer Brown. Why not? He started in the bowl game, looked pretty good to me. I went back over it a little bit, looked fine. I didn't mention the left tackle, did I? I did not mention left tackle. Why not? Jarrett Horst. He's back. He's in the picture. He's got some things he needs to prove. He's done it before. I'll go with Jarrett Horst. Could have gone, Michigan State's talking a little bit with Mac Hollensteiner, portal guy, Georgetown University. I think he's visiting the 25th. I think he could be a Spartan. He's not a Spartan yet. I'm going to go Horst at left tackle. If you disagree, go ahead and put it in the chat area. We can talk about it. At quarterback, you may have heard of him. I've got Peyton Thorne right there. Running back. I'm going to go with Jarek Broussard. He's not even a Spartan yet. I'm going to go with Jarek Broussard. He's going to be visiting pretty soon. He's in the portal, Colorado. Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year in 2020. Was there with Mel Tucker for a year in Boulder. Could I go with Jordan Simmons? Could I go with Eli Collins? Yes, I could. Yes, I could. It's a little early, but I'm going to go with Broussard. We can talk a little bit more about him a little bit later. How about that? Wow, we just called a show now. I think I'm done. That's what I think. Michigan State basketball, 14-3. They lost to those Northwestern Wildcats, 64-62, Breslin Center on Saturday. Sleepy performance on the boards. Another sleepy performance in terms of turnovers. Lost the game outside of the top 10. Had a cranky practice today. Izzo's getting that evil, sinister eye going again, which I think is good. You may have noticed that Tom Izzo has not been doing much yelling this year. And he told us he's not yelling. Like a press conference, he's like, guys, you might notice I'm not yelling as much this year. Well, I think those days are over. I think he's back to yell mode starting this weekend. I think maybe he wanted to show that yelling didn't quite get it done. But Wisconsin's going to be tough. They've got more wins in Quad 1 and Quad 2 than anybody in the country. They're 9-1 against Quad 1 and Quad 2. Let's go over here to see who is shown up so far. Rob South, he's in first again for the second straight week. MJ says Tuck coming. He's in. Old Tuck. We got old Tuck. He's center, the bell cow from Ludington, Michigan, by way of
call from
Big Move.
By way of
to
Austin,
accept,
Texas.
Press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, let's go out to East Lansing, Michigan. Our good friend Ron Armstrong, Big Movie, former defensive back, Michigan State Spartans, early 90s, George Perlis era. He has a card-carrying Spartan dog. And he's with us, and we're going to talk a little football with Ron Armstrong today. Ron, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. What's going on, Comp?
Well, a lot of stuff's going on. I was just talking about Michigan State football here a little bit. And the first questioner wanted me to go over my 2 early projections for the starting lineup for Michigan State football for next year. I mean, Michigan State does have the number 14 basketball team in the country. And we've got the finishing wrap-up of recruiting coming up in February in spring practice. Today began winter conditioning for Michigan State football. But the first question, starting lineup for next year. Some people just can't get enough football, and that's the nature of college football. You play 12 games a year, and for 353 days of the other 353 days of the year, you talk about it. And long story short, I've got Jarek Broussard from Colorado as a starting running back. I just got a feeling he's going to be visiting Michigan State here soon. He's in the portal. Michigan State seems to be serious about him. I don't know if you've heard anything. If you've got inside information that you cannot tell me, you can just hold off on it. But am I crazy to have Broussard as my starting running back next year?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, Pac-12 player, the offensive player of the year, and experienced guy that staff obviously knows well and has a relationship with. I don't think that would be a stretch. I don't think that guy would be transferring into, not to feel like he's going to have a great opportunity to start. So I don't think that would be too much of a stretch to have that as an opinion at all.
I looked at some of his video at Colorado, and Tucker coached him at Colorado a little bit, right? In 2019. Did you bring him in 2019? I can't remember. Maybe. I'll have to double check that one. I'm assuming that's the case. He at least recruited him. Anyway, against Arizona, he rushed for 300 yards that day and had some long ones. He's got what I would call, we'll have his video, we'll look at some highlights here later, but he's got some of that strong-legged jump cut, single plant, change direction to him with some vision and good quickness through the daylight, good acceleration. Maybe not that top-end gear. He's such a good running back that he gets into the open a lot, but doesn't quite have that next gear to turn it into a 75-yard touchdown. He's gotten caught from behind a few times in his highlights, which isn't all bad because, like I said, in the short area, he's got some dynamic qualities. Now, can he improve that speed while he's at Michigan State? I think we saw Kenneth Walker improve his speed. But it's just, if you're a Michigan State fan, Ron, I have to believe it's pretty exciting to see Michigan State get involved with some of these players in the portal, especially a guy that was Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. I mean, just in terms of excitement, that's Michigan State out there swinging a big bat around on the recruiting and the portal trail.
Yeah, and also it's just, to me, it's another example of just how aggressive, this staff is at filling some immediate needs, via the portal. I think, that's the beauty of this thing, that you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years for some of your young guys to be ready. You can jump right into the portal and say, hey, this is a guy we know and we have a need for him, and bring him in. And we saw with Kenneth Walker, just one portal guy can, make a big impact, day one. So I think it's smart, and I think, and I'm glad that, our staff seems to be on the front end of how to use the portal to, offset some of the holes in your roster. So it's great for Michigan State football, and it's great that, our staff is using it that way.
Now, it's 3 weeks ago, but rewind it back to Michigan State defeating Pittsburgh at the Chick-fil-A Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. I've not spoken with you on the air since that game. What did you think about Michigan State solidifying a top 10 season for the 16th time in school history, doing that in year 2 of the Mel Tucker era?
It's big time. 11 wins, and our staff hasn't been on campus for a full two calendar years. It's big time. That's we talked about what kind of year we'd have, and we were 7-8 wins, we were ecstatic. So 11 wins is that's a big time deal, and it was great to see our kids go out there and close out the season out with a W.
What did you think of Jordan Simmons at running back that day?
I didn't think he looked like a confident running back. That was seeing the field well. Some of that stuff is just with the amount of touches you have, and some, so it didn't look like a kid that was feeling his way through, trusting his eyes. I mean, I saw a few times where he just kind of ran it up in there and ran into the back of the lineman a couple of times where it may have been a cut here or there that he could have, popped through and maybe picked up a couple of yards here and there, maybe a 7-8 yard gain. But instead, he just ran into the back of the lineman and got 2 yards. So to me, that looks like a little bit of inexperience, not getting the touches, and maybe some coaching where, he's being coached just, to run the play and not be, not bounce it and not cut. So some of that stuff is just, opportunity, and other, some other stuff is talent. So to the degree which is which, I think, not to disparage any young man, his abilities or whatnot, but I think the fact that we're that active in the portal with, that position might speak to some of that being, not necessarily where they're feeling like that position is where they like it from a talent standpoint.
And Spencer Brown at right tackle. I thought he looked pretty good. And Pittsburgh has some physical guys, and they run a lot of different bodies at you. And fourth quarter, they were trying to put 87 Baldonado on him, and I think Baldonado was second team All-ACC defensive end. Pittsburgh, number 2 in the country in sacks, only had 3 against Michigan State. And I thought Spencer Brown, trial by fire, I think he's a redshirt sophomore, Walled Lake Western, I believe. I thought Spencer Brown acquitted himself pretty well. What did you think about Spencer Brown over there at right tackle?
For sure. I mean, and listen, he definitely has the requisite size you want as a Big Ten lineman, and he didn't look like didn't look like a fish out of water, didn't look stiff, didn't look too slow. So, I mean, you got to feel, look, if you're Spencer Brown, you got to feel good about that game coming, going into winter conditioning in the spring. You got to be fired up to get back out there, because that's a good starting point. And you're, like you said, you're playing against an ACC team that won their league, and so yeah, that's encouraging from a young lineman standpoint, that his first significant amount of snaps. You know, you tail into the Penn State game, and then you go into the bowl game, and you hold up. So I think that's excitement. You know, another young guy that got his chance, and by pretty much early returns, looks like we may have something there.
Mm-hmm. All right, now Michigan State new running backs coach Ephraim Reed, a guy that Michigan State knows well. He's been in the building for 2 years. He was with Jay Johnson over at Louisiana with the Raging Cajuns for a couple of years as a player, then as a graduate assistant. They know this gentleman. He's been with them. He worked with Will Peagler. Will Peagler goes to Florida, takes that job. And the first call that went out was to Ephraim Reed, and I'm sure they probably knew they were going to get him. They brought him back. He's a native of Louisiana. He knows the program. They know him. I think the running back position, from a coaching standpoint, has a chance to just take that baton and accelerate from here. What are you hearing about Ephraim Reed, running backs coach, Michigan State?
Just a ball of energy, excitement. You know, a younger guy, but paid his dues, if you will, and yeah, that was a natural progression type of thing where the timing worked out well for us. You know, that if we're little bit down the road further, I think that might be, a problem getting him to return so quickly. But the timing of it worked out well. And he's going to be a huge asset for us in the room, especially on the recruiting trail. I mean, you're already seeing dividends of that paying off. But that's huge. It's a big time gift for us, and just another sign of just how much positive momentum is going on at the building, with our program. Mm-hmm.
All right, so Ron Burton moves on as defensive line coach. Michigan State hires Brandon Jordan as pass rush specialist. He's defensive ends coach, but he was a pass rush guru the last few years. He's worked with 196. He worked with 196 current NFL players right now, and some college players and recruits. Really well received as far as players go. They think highly of him. Players that are out there, professionals, the best in the world, when they want to hone their craft as pass rushers, they go to him. Headquartered in Houston, originally from New Orleans. Did some coaching earlier in his career, small colleges down in the Southwest, Southeast, also at Austin Peay. Then went into his own business, his own training business. Michigan State tapped him to come in as defensive ends coach. You've known that kind of about this for a number of weeks, that he was on the radar and he was interested and so forth. How do you think players are going to feel about this? How do you think that they feel about a pass rush, a guy that could come in and maybe give more attention to pass rush skills from a guy that's recognized and, in terms of his clientele, he's been hired by the best in the world. Now he's going to be at Michigan State coaching pass rush. Your thoughts about that for this program and what the players are going to think about it and what recruits are going to think about it?
Yeah, I would imagine these guys I'd imagine, first of all, from my standpoint, I think it's incredible just because it's just a sign of, man, we're not going to leave any stone unturned to try to get better, to try to get that next level. And, we led the Big Ten in sacks, but how many of those came in big moments, and really just the ability to be able to win your individual matchup. Coach Tucker talks about all the time. You got to be able to beat the guy in front of you. And if we can go out and find, the guy who the best of the best go to learn, technique and tricks of the trade, and we can have him in East Lansing and he's training our guys daily, and, you're getting NFL level coaching day in and day out that can't help but pay off. And as far as our guys, I'm sure they're fired up to get back out there and, meet with coach and learn, pick his brain and, get on the field and just learn and how to work on their craft to get better.
And now Michigan State's got
to
go ahead.
But just real quickly, just to say that, hey man, Michigan State football got better when we hired that guy.
That's the long and short of it right there. It's an outside the box hire. But it makes perfect sense. A guy that Jordan that is held in such high regard by the professionals, and I'm sure he wouldn't go to just any program. There's some talk that some other programs have been interested in him in the past, but Mel Tucker's got he sparked some interest out there. You can feel it. You've seen it. And I don't know if that gentleman would have been coming this far north to just coach for anybody. So he's an interesting one. Ron Burton moves on. Now Michigan State has an opportunity to hire a defensive line coach or defensive tackles coach. However they're going to do it, I'm not sure if the next hire will oversee the whole defensive line and Jordan just specializes in defensive tackles, or if they hire a defensive tackle coach who's equal with Jordan. Hazelton always has a hand in defensive line work also. So it's an opportunity now for Michigan State for that next defensive line hire. I assume it's going to be a defensive line hire. It's got to be a defensive line hire. Likely defensive tackle hire. Your thoughts on that? I know there's a lot of things are quiet out there right now, and maybe you might know some things that you're not allowed to say. But your thoughts about Michigan State probably hiring from a position of strength as they look for a defensive tackles coach.
I think the one thing you can do with this when you bring in Brandon as your DNs, pass rush specialist. I think what it also gives you an opportunity to do is find a D tackle specialist. If there's somebody out there that specializes in D tackles, I think you have a ton of flexibility in what you're looking for. But ultimately, I think it's going to be somebody who's great at recruiting and great at relationships, because as we talked about, and something I kind of hinted at, I think we're seeing a shift in focus. Urban Meyer always talked about how that your coaches have to be able to recruit first. You have to be strong recruiters first, and I think we're seeing that be a point of emphasis moving forward. That we got to be able to get get these guys championship level players to Michigan State, and that starts with recruiting. It starts with relationship building. So as far as the next guy, I think his ability to recruit, his ability to teach, and his ability to communicate at the championship level is going to be something that I would suspect that Tucker and the staff are going to prioritize.
All right, let's move on here a little bit. Amir Speed transferring to Michigan State today. We talked about this earlier in the show just a few minutes ago. 6'3", 211 at the corner position. I watched some film of him today. He's got quick hips. Now, I watched him get beat on a couple plays against South Carolina. I mean, that happens. Got caught in a hurry-up situation up in press coverage. But even though he got beat, his hips are quick for 6'3", and his closing speed is good. 6'3", 211, a guy that started 3 games for the best defense, one of the best defenses in recent memory, college football history probably. Did not hold on to the job. Ringo came in and took it, and Ringo was the number 7 recruit in the country, number 2 corner in the country. Did not play in 2020 because of injury. This year was a redshirt freshman, and by game 4, Ringo was the starter. And the other guy that transferred in from Clemson was first team All ACC. So he was behind, a super blue chipper and a guy that transferred in from Clemson. Started for 3 games, became injured ankle. Midway through the year, came back, played a little bit against Missouri, maybe 10, 15 snaps in most games, continued to play on special teams. A young man that's looking for an opportunity, similar to Ronald Williams. And we saw what Ronald Williams did. Amir Speed, frankly, comes in with Ronald Williams plus on his resume in terms of experience, size, and I'd say probably athleticism too. And Ronald Williams turned out to be pretty solid. Amir Speed becoming a Spartan, your thoughts on that, Ron?
I think, with first of all, you're getting a kid that was in the playing group on that Georgia defense. I think it's safe to assume that he can help us.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
The second part of that, I think, is if you combine that with X coming back, suddenly you're starting to see a secondary with a ton of flexibility, a ton of options. Where early, if you asked me in late December, I would have assumed that Williams may have been a candidate to move to the back end and play safety with X if X were to leave. But now with X staying and Speed, I mean, you have 3 or 4 guys that you can move around. I think what we will see if I were to just kind of throw some guesses out there is that we'd see Gross, moving closer to the ball, using his ability to run in the slot a little bit more than having to play deep safety. So, but again, you got a ton of experience coming back. We'll see how long Chuck's going to be out. But I mean, if you're just looking at, you're kind of forecasting out. There's 5 or 6 guys that in that playing group right now, and it gives the defense a ton of flexibility in how we want to cover and things like that. Because if you were to decide to go with Speed at corner and Williams at corner, that's 2 really big corners.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many teams you're going to see on in the Big Ten at least that you're going to throw out 6'2" plus 200-pound corners
None.
that can run and cover and be physical. So that gives you you're starting to see what what Tucker wants and the kind of body types we're after when you start saying you have 6'2" plus 200-pound corners. So again, there's just a ton of flexibility and there's something else that can't be underestimated. I put this in the group, is that you're getting another guy with a championship ring that knows championship preparation, and you can't have too many of those guys in your program that knows what it's supposed to look like in the offseason, knows what the prep's supposed to look like, knows what the film, all those little things that you're trying to get there, having a guy, especially a recent champion with, that was part of the playing group. That guy knows what it's supposed to look like. He doesn't have to have Tuck or anybody else in his ear telling him what championship work looks like. He knows already. And, it's when you get in those the dog days of winter and it's, you're running conditioning and a guy who has a championship ring is like, hey man, this is what we have to do if we want to be champions. These are the things, these are the daily deposits we have to make. Not saying it's easier to listen to, but guys may be more receptive to it because of the fact that he's coming fresh off of that national championship. So now you got 2 guys in that secondary room that, they're echoing the same things. So you got Chuck Brantley. You have some of these younger guys that are learning championship habits on a daily basis. Those things pay off.
Yeah. Ronald Williams last year in August, his experience, just 1 year with Nick Saban and the expectations and the daily reckoning that takes place in that program. It didn't make Michigan State's training camp a snap, but I think he was more prepared for it than other Michigan State players were. And this Amir Speed, he'll be able to come in. I like what you're saying about versatility too, because I don't know how long it's going to take these guys to all get on the same page. That's a phrase that I use maybe too much, but you have to get that same pageness and you have to get deep into the playbook and have that spoken or unspoken or just brief ability to communicate and make changes based on emotion or if someone goes in motion or a formation changes just a little bit and you can change up if you can get that far along in development. For instance, I don't know if Michigan State was ever there, but you'll see it in the NFL sometimes, in some college teams, where if a wide receiver goes in motion and a corner runs with him, that usually declares man-to-man because he's running with him across formation. There's some defensive backfields that have such versatility and interchangeable talents and experience and ability to communicate with one another that they can run a corner with a guy and it looks like man-to-man, then the ball is snapped and it becomes zone because that corner that ran with him can all of a sudden flex back into safety right then. That's sophisticated stuff. I don't know if Michigan State can get to that, but they've got body types that could give them some versatility that they could maybe dabble with that someday. I don't know if you can do it with all of their pieces, but Henderson can in a moment's notice jump over and play corner, like a cover 3 corner for a snap. They've done that a little bit here and there. But the versatility of bodies,
for sure. At worst, you don't feel like you have to panic if you get out formation. That's going to there's going to be unscouted looks, and they'll come with a formation that you're not prepared for. But if you have 5 in your back 7, your back 5 guys, you feel like we can run and cover with anybody. You even if you get caught in a look that you may not have been prepared for, or just caught off guard, or maybe they just caught you in a bad look. You don't have to panic because you have guys back there that can all run and cover and they can all tackle in space. So as a defensive coach, you don't feel like you necessarily have to match personnel and shift and everything like that when the offense shifts because of that versatility of your back 5.
What do you think about Michigan State being able to go out? When Amir Speed goes in the portal, everybody wants him. A lot of programs want him. Michigan State able to get him 7 days later. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think some part of that is existing relationships, but I think a huge part of that is the opportunity that presents itself, and let's be honest, the success we've had with the transfer portal. Guys know they're going to come here, they're going to get a shot, and they're going to get a shot to make loud plays, and they're going to play in big games. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, mainly because we embraced the portal, so quickly, and what it could do to our roster. I think the word is out there that, Michigan State is a legitimate destination. If you could play, you're going to get a shot.
You mentioned existing relationships. Mel Tucker recruited Amir Speed, and so did Harlan Barnett when he was at Michigan State. It's one thing to have existing relationships. Sometimes relationships go sour. They didn't go sour, obviously, in this case. Amir Speed is excited to be coached by these people. I heard that, last year, Mel Tucker went down to Georgia with Tom Izzo to view the facilities and to take notes as Michigan State developed their plan for their facilities for the football building back in East Lansing. They toured the facilities at the University of Georgia. And I heard while they were down there, Tucker was in the football office, football building, looking around with Izzo and taking notes and so forth. And boom, Amir Speed happened to be in there working out, ran over, gave Mel Tucker a hug because Tucker had coached him and recruited him in the past. And that was the reception Tucker got being back on campus. Amir Speed was that happy to see him. So when he entered the portal, it's no surprise that Michigan State's a school that he was interested in looking at, especially with Michigan State coming off a top 10 season in which Michigan State, a season that finished for Michigan State in the state of Georgia, which is not bad for the headlines down there either. So good day for Michigan State to get Amir Speed. When he entered the portal, there was a lot of chatter that Michigan State could be right in there. Then things went quiet for a while, and then boom, he decides he's going to Michigan State today. Now, if they can go get Broussard, that would make Michigan State among the best in the country. I would think, again, in terms of immediate impact portal potential for 2022, which is what people are going to start expecting from Michigan State. And why not? And Broussard, after what Kenneth Walker did, you can't blame him for looking at Michigan State either. Your thoughts on about trying to close in on him and what that would say if they can get Broussard?
I think one of the big takeaway from this is there's some good reputation out there, and amongst portal kids who are considering entering the portal that this is a good destination. You have an opportunity, like I said, opportunity to compete for playing time, playing big games, and you have an opportunity to win. So those things are important. But I think when we start talking about a guy like Broussard, he's a heck of a football player. Let's start there. But I think the supporting cast around him is going to be better. So that's not to say we wouldn't. Obviously, we'd love to have another Kenneth Walker, but I don't think we'll need, and I say need, quote, that Walker covered up a ton of things, shortcomings. I think we'll be a better team around Broussard if he were to transfer, or Berger, whoever the running back is back there. The offensive line should be a bit more locked in. With a couple of years, those young guys in the program, should start to play, get some playing time. That defense, I think, should be better. I mean, if you look at the personnel, I do think we've improved. Mm-hmm. Just from the bodies, I think that we have coming back, some of the guys we brought in. So what I mean by that is whomever the running back is, that there's going to be a transfer. Whichever guy's day one starter, they're going to have a lot less on their plate than Kenneth Walker. So I expect you should be able to see those guys go out and play some winning football for us and not have to shoulder as much of the load that the K9 did, this past season.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Darius Snow in the bowl game at safety? I'm assuming you took a close look at him at that new position, which was a surprise that day.
I thought, here's what's really, really funny about that kid is wherever you put him, he's where he's supposed to be. A lot of football, man, is if you're just where you're supposed to be and make the plays you're supposed to make, it can be a really easy game. But it didn't look like a game where he was out of position. But let's just be honest. That quarterback situation they had really didn't give him an opportunity for them to stress him in the passing game. Because we know he's fantastic and his run fits and coming up and putting pads on folks. But their quarterback situation didn't provide much of a test for him as far as throwing the football. So I think that's the part where you're not sure what you have back there as far as him being able to play deep and cover routes or whatnot. But I know this, that he's going to be where he's supposed to be. Just that kid is really out of position. I mean, he struggled a little bit with some space in the season against Purdue, but to his credit, got in the film because I thought he was really solid in space against Penn State. So look, man, again, just more flexibility. That if you're Michigan State, there's times where you could have him in as a linebacker. Now you're playing with sort of 6 DBs on the field, but he's big enough, he's physical enough that you may be able to, sneak him in there on a few snaps on some run fits. So just another flexible, multi-dimensional player that he's starting, like I said, he's starting to look at this personnel and some of the body types and guys out there. You're getting a better understanding of what they want this defense to look like.
Sure. And it's exciting. I know that you keep in contact with former Michigan State players, some of your best friends. What's the vibe out there with those guys? Also, have you caught any of the vibe over at the Michigan State football building here in January as winter conditioning begins? What's the climate right now?
Man, everybody's fired up. It's usually a pretty tame group this time of year. I don't know a lot of guys aren't really recruiting. They don't really follow the recruiting as much, or they just kind of wait and see who we have and show up and ready to cheer. But man, now guys are fired up and chomping at the bit and ready to see what these new kids can do. I mean, they're excited about Tucker. Everybody's ready to pitch in and just do their part, whatever it may be, whatever that looks like. If it's hosting the dinner, or if it's talking about recruiting on with you, or whatever the little thing that we could do to push the program forward. I think you're starting to see more guys want to be a part of that, and however that looks, whatever little piece they can do to help the program. It's just more of us willing to do that these days. So it's exciting. I think it's for us, some of our older guys, it's really exciting. We're strong, man, as far as guys want to be a part of this and moving this thing forward. I think some of the shock of Tucker, saying those magic words about national championship is worn. I think that initial shock is worn off, and now guys are seeing that. Why not us? Why can't we have those kind of aspirations and things like that at Michigan State? So the short of it is, guys are excited, man, and fired up to help.
All right, Jason Killip does a real good job covering recruiting for SpartanMag.com. Shout out to Jason. Good job. Really appreciate your work. He got in touch with a lot of the recruits that visited this past week. I think all of them, the juniors that visited, they had a big junior visit weekend this year at Michigan State, this weekend at Michigan State, including they went to the Northwestern basketball game. Didn't turn out Spartans' favor that day, but the players were pretty impressed with the atmosphere of Michigan State fans. I've got a quote here from Cole Dellinger. Cole Dellinger is an offensive guard prospect from Clarkston. 6'4", 260, a 4-star, ranked number 187 in the country by Rivals.com, number 3 player in the state of Michigan. And Cole Dillinger said, Michigan State really pushed hard for me yesterday, meaning Saturday. They told me I was a high priority target, and they want me to be the first offensive line commit. I am considering it. He said, I want to go on a couple visits still as well. I think it really shows how our relationship is and how much I'm wanted there. He said, about Mel Tucker, he said, quote, he expects, this is Cole Dellinger, 4-star recruit from Clarkston, talking about Mel Tucker, quote, Coach Tucker expects the 2023 class to be a top 5 recruiting class, and he wants me to lead it, unquote. Your thoughts on that? Mel Tucker telling recruits that he wants to have a top 5 recruiting class in 2023.
It just speaks to exactly what we were just talking about, Comp, that he's not shying away from, expectations. He's not selling Michigan State short, saying, hey, we expect to be, right there with everybody. No, man, we don't expect to be. We're not going to take a back seat to anybody. And I think I like that approach. And if you don't shoot for championship level, then you'll just get less than that. And I'm glad that Tuck and the staff are taking that approach and not being afraid of it. Because, and maybe some other programs might snicker at that, say, how dare they, think that they're going to be, well, that's fine. Their expectations of us does not have to be what our expectations are. So I'm glad that Tucker is taking that approach. All I can say is about time. I know that wasn't the expectations when we were here, and I don't recall it being the expectations on any other coach. So about time we have somebody that's not afraid to jump in and say, hey, we can do whatever anybody else can there. We can do that here.
You have to venture into the Sun Belt to do that a little bit, and he's got the ability to do that more so than some other Michigan State outfits we've seen over the years. You look at some sudden risers in the recruiting world, and it can be done. I look at North Carolina last year, and I think a little bit this year, coming out of nowhere really to have top 10 type of classes. They've not had the success on the field yet, and they've got Mack Brown as a coach. They are down there in the Southeast. It's easier maybe in some regards for them to recruit at that level, but North Carolina is not all that important. Football is not all that important at the University of North Carolina, famously. They've got some recruits in their backyard to an extent, but when I say famously, I know somebody that was at a North Carolina football game, I think when Mack Brown was coaching there previously, when they were top 5 in the country. They had a real big game going on. I don't know the specifics. And in the third quarter, it's a tight game, very important game. Everybody left to go watch the blue-white preseason inter-squad scrimmage in basketball. Like half the stadium left. Now that's a generation ago. That's 20 years ago. But they've been able to recruit top 10 that way. And I'm a little bit of an old fogey. Like, man, I'll believe it when I see it in terms of Michigan State recruiting in top 10. Now Penn State's done it a little bit lately. We went over their class last week here on the show. And Penn State this year was helped a lot by a really strong in-state class in the state of Pennsylvania. In-state recruiting in Pennsylvania has not been real strong the last 10, 12 years in terms of rankings, for what it's worth. It was strong this year. Penn State did real well close to home. They had a real nice top 10 class and didn't necessarily have to go all Sun Belt to do it. Franklin has said in the past that he wants to go further from campus, and it needs to be done in order to recruit the way they want to recruit at Penn State, letting the home people know, hey, people, we can't have a national championship team with 80% Pennsylvania guys like we could in 1981. It's just not feasible. He's told them that. He's conditioned them that. But this year went out and recruited Pennsylvania real hard. Anyway, Penn State, it's a stronger program year in and year out, decade in, decade out than Michigan State the last 40 years. North Carolina, not that way. We've seen Clemson rise. Their fans are crazy, and they've got a lot of talent in their backyard. For Michigan State to do it, they would have to make a rise like a North Carolina, maybe like a Clemson that might be a little more horsepower than maybe Michigan State that I think has under the hood at this point. But Penn State's done it a little bit closer to this region, and Penn State did it without hitting New Jersey a whole lot this year. I may not have thought top 10 was even possible 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe not something Michigan State should bother chasing. But with this outfit, Mel Tucker and the staff he's assembling, and these recruits and the players that they have, that I think most of them, I think there's a lot of people that like to be a part of it, and they have to help recruit as well. Like Izzo says, your best players have to be your best recruiters. And maybe they're getting to that point as well. But, Ron, if North Carolina can do it, why not Michigan State? I guess is what I'm getting at before I let you go.
Absolutely. And I think the key is you got to start somewhere. And I think that's one of the neat things about the transfer portal is, those kids probably don't come to Michigan anymore. I mean, they didn't come to Michigan State out of high school, but they're here now, and they're getting to experience East Lansing, and maybe opening, having them on campus. It's an easier sell to a kid from their high school. It's an easier sell to a kid from their region. So you're not going in there just, cold calling, if you will. You're going in there with a warm call where Ronald Williams is on the team, where Chris Bogle is on the team, where, having those Southern guys come up here and have success from the portal makes it a little bit easier to recruit high school kids from that area. So now you have, you got a kid from Buford coming up here, so you just keep pushing forward with kids from that region. And all they have to do is just see, success breeds success. So, the more kids we can have from those areas come to Michigan State, and not fear the cold and not fear the snow, and figure out that there's good football to be played in the Big Ten, and most especially at Michigan State, I think it becomes that much easier a sell. When you couple that with some of the existing relationships that our coaching staff has in place down there, and it's not something that seems impossible. We know there's going to be a process and it's going to be, take time, but it doesn't seem like, nah, we can't go down there and recruit with against Florida and some of these teams in that area. Well, we probably couldn't have, but it doesn't take long for kids to see, do something different. And how many kids do you have to get per year? Use 3 or 4. Then, next year it's 6 or 8. The next year, and pretty soon you look up and you have, 40 guys in your program that are from, as called the Sun Belt states. And those 40 guys, they know another 20. Mm-hmm. So now when they go home and they're wearing Michigan State stuff, to the high school basketball game, to their buddies, football game or their cousin's hoop game, and they got on Michigan State sweatsuits and all green. And then the coach comes in. Now it's not, oh yeah, Michigan State. They may as well be 10,000 miles from home. It doesn't feel like that anymore. So that's why it's important to get some of these, these transfers and get them up here and have success, because it only makes recruiting that area that much easier.
Mm-hmm. And Michigan State's bringing in Aaron Brule out of New Orleans by way of Mississippi State as a transfer. Michigan State hires Ephraim Reed, who's originally from New Orleans. Brandon Jordan's originally from New Orleans. What about Louisiana recruiting? That's something that Mel Tucker seemed to be interested in when he was hired here. We talked about that last week. The gentleman they had, Cordell, is it Hankton? Corday Hankton, who moved on. But Tucker, that was part of his business plan, was to get something going in Georgia, get something going in Louisiana. And maybe you're not going to go down to Louisiana and beat A&M and LSU on a regular basis for the very best, but there's a lot of good ones down there. There's depth, and maybe you can shake one or two loose. Ephraim Reed, Brandon Jordan, with those two guys, and Mel Tucker riding along with them. Your thoughts about Reed and Jordan as recruiters in the state of Louisiana? Louisiana, I mean, Billy Joe Dupree came from there a long time ago, and he was a great one.
Right. For sure.
And it's been few and far between since then, but can Michigan State do something in Louisiana?
Listen, absolutely. Outside the state of Georgia, I think that's another, Georgia, Louisiana are two top, as far as producing, NFL talent. They're right up there, per capita with the Floridas and the Texas. So I think it's just another opportunity to get in front of great football players, great high school football players, great talent. And again, you don't have to beat LSU and A&M and those guys for everybody. You just got to beat them for a few of those kids, and they can't take them all. Every year there's some good high school football players that slip through the cracks and ends up at Kansas State or some of these programs. And you look up on draft day and like, well, how'd that kid end up there? Well, just because they can't take them all. Mm-hmm. So, and in order to get some, you have to be down there and you have to shake hands. And you have to have people who know who to know. Sometimes it's not people like, oh, it's always who you know. Well, sometimes it's who knows you, and they're working on on your behalf, without you even being aware that they're working on your behalf. So your name is in rooms that you're not even in. So when you show up, you're not a stranger.
Mm-hmm. And Ephraim Reed Ephraim Reed's 29 years old. Jordan's probably in his late 30s or so, I'm guessing. So two different levels there that don't go back too far. They probably know They probably know a lot of people down there.
Yeah, listen. Ephraim, and certain places, man, is your name needs to be good, in certain areas, and somebody needs to be able to vouch for you. Say, hey, this is a guy you could trust. This is a guy who knows what he's going to do the right things, and it can't hurt having a younger guy who's knows the area, represent your university. So I think that's getting Ephraim and getting him in New Orleans and some of those. Tough to get in schools, because let's face it, some of those schools, man, you're just not going to waltz in there. You really have to have somebody who knows somebody for you to be able to get in and pull kids out of there. High school coaches and some of these folks have a lot of say in where kids go in some of these programs. So it's going to be huge having him on, having his name associated with our program down there.
I lied. I got one more thing for you. Over here in the chat area, Marco Rollo says, earlier I was talking about my too early starting 11 at linebacker. I've got Cale Halliday. He had a good year as a freshman, looking pretty good. Quavaris Crouch is still around. Aaron Brule's still in there. But Marco Rollo says, I said I went with Halliday and Crouch. Why not? They're both returning. I put them in there. And Marco Rollo posts me up and he says, neither Wyndham nor Brule starting. I don't see that happening. Talking about Jacoby Winman transferring in as a linebacker from UNLV, looked pretty good on his film. Brule was expected to be one of the faces of the defense for Mississippi State this year. Maybe he didn't quite have the home run year he was expecting. In my humble opinion, I think that he has a chance to really improve his body in the weight room with Michigan State's strength conditioning and nutrition program. I think it will happen with him. So I think he could aspire toward that high ceiling of potential that Brule has. But anyway, he took me to task. I got Halliday and Crouch. He's telling me, hey, it's got to be Wyndham and Brule. I'm crazy. Your thoughts? I'm not asking you who's right and who's wrong, but that's an interesting situation at linebacker. What's your take on that?
I think
I'll just put it this way: going into the spring. I'm not talking for August and September. I'm just saying
we're going to starters. Going into the spring is definitely. I would definitely start with Halliday and Crouch. You won a lot of football games with those two guys. They're going to have a leg up with knowing the scheme and just have that much more experience. But as far as upgrading the talent, there's no question that we've upgraded the linebacker room. Just adding, Brule and Winman to the team. But, I mean, towards the end of the year, I noticed, you and I talked about this, you saw Halliday taking charge of that defense, directing traffic, getting folks lined up. You don't take that out of your lineup.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you just when you have your Mike backer and he's starting to, see the field globally and get people in the right place and sort of take a leadership role and take charge of that defense, you don't take that lightly. And if we're seeing Brule or Winman supplant Halliday, it won't just be because they're better athletes. It's because those guys got in the film room, they got in the playbook, and they learned that defense, not just their position, but where they see them, on a global sense, where all the other, 10 guys on the field are supposed to be in a given call. So that's a tough task, to expect a transfer to come in and supplant a guy who's played a ton of snaps and has a full 13, 14 game head start on them on just where everybody's supposed to be in the system. But, who knows? But if we're just saying right now, I would be surprised if 27 isn't out there, barking out the signals to start the season, even to start the season. Now, as a Crouch, I think, he probably has the most work to do as far as between the two to fend off competition. Certainly, we saw that he can make plays, he can run around, but there's also been, some whispers about him freelancing a little bit. So, he's going to have to tighten it up to fight off the competition. But hey, man, that's a good problem to have. It
is. You have to adhere to your assignments to stay on the field. That's where Michigan State wants to get to. You got to. What's Mel Tucker say? Show up to compete, compete to play, compete to stay type of thing. So,
yes, sir.
It's gonna be competitive this spring. It's gonna be fun. Hey, Ron, I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you talking a little football here on a cold January night in East Lansing. I like the cold. I think it feels good. I like it. I don't know about you. You may disagree.
I'm already counting down till I can get out there at Spartan Stadium on April 16th and sit in the stands and take in some warm weather and watch some spring football.
I hear you. I don't blame you. I'm just a little weird that way. I like January feeling the way January's supposed to feel up here, and but it's good. It's good for Michigan State fans to feel that way on the heels of an 11-2 season. We'll be talking more about it heading through winter conditioning and into spring practice. What's great about following college football right now is that there's news every single day, whether it be the portal or recruiting or coaches hirings or where coaches are visiting on a given day. It's great. But anyway, I'll let you go. Got another guest coming in right now, Ron. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Comp. Go Green.
There goes Ron.
Call from
Nils.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, we're going to talk a little basketball now. We're going to bring in Nils, formerly of the Horn in Austin, Texas. He's an astute Michigan State observer, football, basketball, former Division III quarterback at Wabash College. He is the founder of the JUCO Advocate for Basketball Recruiting in the Texas Top 100. Texas Top 100, one of the co-founders, TexasTop100.com, basketball recruiting. He's a legend for SpartanMaggers, and I certainly appreciate him as a friend and also an astute observer of college football, college basketball, and a lot of other great things. Nils Deco now headquartered in Houston, Texas. Nils, welcome to Spartan Mag Live. You are on the air. How you doing, Nils?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Jimmy?
Good. We just talked with Ron Armstrong there for a little bit. We've talked about the starting 22 heading into spring practice for football. It's hot stove league up here in East Lansing. People still fired up about being 11-2, number 8 in the country in the year 2021.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
I think that's pretty good. I think the history books will show that's kind of good.
Well, I think the Spartans, Coach Tucker and his crew, are doing a pretty good job.
I think you're right. Now, Michigan State basketball, 14-3. They lost 64-62 to Northwestern on Saturday, noon game. Michigan State never quite got out of the quicksand in that one. Northwestern, credit to them. They were better than the record. A lot of teams in the Big Ten are better than the record. Everybody knows what happened. Offensive rebounding was a problem for the Spartans. Or defensive rebounding was a problem with the Spartans, with Northwestern getting 17 offensive rebounds, the most Michigan State had given up since, a game in 2019 against Purdue. Couple that with a turnover problem. 18, 19 turnovers. It all adds up to Michigan State having 15 fewer shot attempts than Northwestern. Free throws were about even, so that's enough to get you beat, even when you hold a team into the 30s shooting percentage-wise, while Michigan State shot really well that day but didn't get enough shots up. Disappointing loss. Now getting ready to play Wisconsin. Your thoughts about that Northwestern game, and what's on your mind for Michigan State basketball right now? What are your thoughts, Nils Deco?
I think this is the most tentative team we've had. This has happened forever. So here's a conversation I had with Billy Gillespie, who's the former head coach at Texas A&M, at Kentucky. I've known him. I've grown to know him over time in the last 5-6 years, and I thought about Michigan State as an offensive rebounding team. He said, Nils, here's the difference. The three-pointer has alleviated or, kind of gotten rid of Michigan State's ability to offensive rebound like they did when he was at Illinois as an assistant to Bill Self back in the day when they had, D. Brown, Darren Williams, Luther Head, James Augustine. That was that 2005 year that the Big Ten was like they were in, the late 80s. Like they were the best conference in the country, right? The Big Ten in 2005 is as good as any league there ever was, right? Michigan State had Alan Anderson, Kelvin Torbert, Shannon Downtown Brown, Maurice Ager, Paul Davis, my favorite Michigan State player of all time, Matt Trannon, But in 2005, it was a different game. Now, with offensive rebounding, you saw it the other day against Northwestern. Michigan State had a hard time on long threes being able to defensive rebound. They're like, there's a situation there. I don't know what the score was, but Northwestern had 3 or 4 long offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
And Michigan State probably was on the.
And then I think Gabe Brown cleared the defensive rebound, and there was a Bronx cheer from the Breslin crowd. When have you ever heard a Bronx cheer for Michigan State to get a rebound?
But it was a different game, though. It's like it wasn't an effort situation. It was a situation where the balls went long. They were all short, right? So that ball short, it's going to come back, and you got to get handcuffed like a knuckleball in that situation. So that's what happened to Michigan State.
Interesting.
And it's a different game when people are shooting the threes. And Billy Gillespie, I never thought about it until I had that conversation with him. He said, Nils, you understand, Michigan State can't rebound like they did back in the 90s, the late 90s. It's like you couldn't throw 4 or 5 guys at the board because the ball's going to come out long because it's a different game. People aren't shooting 15-footers all the time. They're shooting 22-footers, so you don't know where the ball's going to come off of.
That goes from
Dennis Rodman would be a different offensive rebounder, defensive rebounder today than he was, 20 years ago. It's a different game.
At both ends, because for defensive rebounding, you're going to give up more of those fluke rebounds. And on offensive rebounding, 4 to the boards is a little bit more of a gamble because of those long rebounds, because Michigan State is shooting more three-pointers than they used to. You send 4 to the boards, and it's a long rebound that you've shot. The other team's getting it going and making you pay for going 4 to the boards. Michigan State goes 4 to the boards here and there.
Like a 6-6.
Wow, you may have ruined my night, Nils.
Why?
Well, because I'm kind of, when it comes to sports, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I'm kind of a little bit hesitant about change.
But this is a guy that, had coached at all levels, who had cussed me out about a kid by the name of Leon Sneed that I couldn't place there. And I'm like, dude, I don't even work for you. But Billy Clyde, talk about a guy that's coached at all levels, and he's pretty real. But, this is a guy that every time you have a conversation with, he's like, he remembers every conversation I ever had with him. I'm like, dude, how do you remember this stuff? every player I tried to send you, and Billy Clyde, he remembers. Sometimes not good, but just understanding like a guy that, can coach at that level. But I think Michigan State, I think another thing is I was thinking about Tyson Walker. I think he's way too tentative. I don't think he plays enough downhill. Back to the Kalen Lucas, Moteen Cleaves, Corey Lucius days. Like, that's the one thing I think Tyson Walker, if they allow him to play downhill, get to the bucket, kick and create, I think he'll be a different player. Like, these games where he's just, passing to the wing, he kind of being a table setter, I don't think that works for him. There's a reason he averaged 18 points a game last year at Northeastern, and he was, the defensive player of the year in the CAA. He's an aggressive player. If you don't allow him to be aggressive, you're not playing to his strengths. And I think sometimes, like Saturday, last 2 or 3 games, he has not been aggressive. Let him play downhill. Let him get to the basket. If he has an offensive foul, great, whatever it may be. But I don't think he's been aggressive enough, and I think that's a guy that can set the tone for the rest of the team. I think Marcus Bingham plays off of him. I mean, I think, Gabe Brown plays off him. This is a guy because A.J. Hoggard, for all his misgivings last year, that's the one thing he has been this year. Is very aggressive, attack the basket, play through contact, done an amazing job. I think Tyson Walker can do that same thing, but I think he's overthinking it, and he doesn't play downhill. I mean, I think he's a downhill player, just like a Kalen Lucas was back in, 2008 to 2011.
You know what Tyson Walker is shooting from three-point range this year?
He's in the 50s, is he not?
57%.
So he's not taking enough shots.
A point guard shooting
50%.
A point guard shooting 50% from three is about as lethal of a weapon as you can have in college basketball. Now, he's only attempted 28 three-pointers all year.
That's not enough. He should be at 45.
I mean, Jaden Akins has attempted 25, almost as many.
Yeah,
Malik
know how that works.
Malik Hall's attempted 34. Yeah, he's got to shoot more of those.
I think Tyson Walker, I think Izzo and Wojcik and DJ Stevens and Montgomery are going to make him more aggressive on the second half of the season. I think he's a different player. Because he can get 18 points a game. He did that last year, right? Every game he got 18 points a game. I think they're trying to kind of feel out. He needs to be the guy. Has he been the guy the whole year, though, Jim? He hasn't been the guy all year.
What do you mean, the guy?
The guy where he goes out there and gets his stuff. I mean, he's never – what's the most shots he's attempted in the game?
I got it right here. 9.
Right, 12,
12 against Oakland. Other than that,
okay.
That's the only
so
time.
That's
the only time he's had double figures shot attempts.
That's a problem.
He's done it 3 times. 4 of 9 against Minnesota, 3 of 9 against Toledo, 5 of 9 against Penn State, 3 of 9 against Loyola. I guess 4 times he shot 9. But usually he's shooting at an average of 6 or 7 a game. I mean, to his credit,
Keith Appling shooting with a bad wrist in 2013.
Yeah, he'd get 10, 11, 12, 13 shots up. Even just at the end of shot clocks, he'll get shots up. Now, Michigan State, a lot of times, in the shot clocks, they get it to Gabe Brown, and he's going to fire it up, which is not a bad option either. And he's more than willing to go and launch it. But Tyson Walker, I've been saying all year, is a good kid who wanted to come in and not chuck shots and not step on toes and steal shots from his new teammates. He wanted to win them over like a good point guard should. But man, when he gets a little in-between game, there was a game, was it the Minnesota game after a switch or the Northwestern game when he had a little, coming off a screen, there was a switch, and the center was on him. I think it was Curry from Minnesota, and he just stopped at 14 feet or 16 feet over like in the left wing area and said, "Oh, I'm open. This guy's guarding me." Boom, just knocked it down like nothing, And when have you ever seen him take a shot that's ugly?
Never, all year.
Maybe toward the rim, he gets in a tight situation in there, but more often than not, when it's a tight situation in there, I've seen him, hit some gorgeous high glassers. Did that against Butler, I remember early in the year. But you don't see him, missing any ugly shots, Tyson Walker. Now, interestingly, his overall field goal percentage is not good, 40%, which sometimes with point guards that'll happen because they're taking those shots at the end of the shot clock. I just mentioned that a lot of times he's not doing it. But I don't know if I've ever seen a guy have a percentage that's 57% from three, but 40% overall, which means his 2-point field goal percentage has got to be down around 30, which is strange. But
That's no sense at all.
But it's not like he's a guy that can't shoot the medium range jumper. He can. Ball screen, get into an open space, one dribble, pull up jumper, 15, 16 feet. That can and should and could and I think will become more of a productive part of the Michigan State offense, Tyson Walker. But you bring up a good point. Marcus Bingham. All right, now he struggled last few games, and I mentioned it in the .comp article coming out of the Northwestern disappointment that we have to remember that this is a guy that had COVID not long ago. And yeah, he has struggled since Christmas. The team has struggled since Christmas. What does all that have in common? His bout with COVID going back to before the Oakland game, I think, right around Christmas time. I never got a chance to ask Bingham or Izzo about it in the last couple of weeks, but I planned to ask him about it today, but someone else asked it before I did, which was great. And Izzo said, yeah, that is a factor. We talked about that today. Izzo is kind of in the camp of mentally, we don't want to use that as an excuse, but yes, it's been something. Bingham, he did interviews today, and he said, yeah, he has felt it. And we've heard about that before with high-level athletes, whether it's Omicron or past variants, that they've had trouble. Some players, some citizens have trouble regaining, their stamina. They'll be tired for a week or two or longer, and it happens also with high-level elite recruits. Marcus Bingham is a guy that struggled with his stamina previously to begin with, going back last year, the year before, a guy that has struggled with fatigue. Worked on that. Izzo talked about they wanted to mentally work on him psychologically. They thought it was a psychological wall back in October, November for him to battle through fatigue. When you get a little uncomfortable, battle through it, because they needed Bingham to battle through it. So that was his background as a guy with suspect stamina to begin with. Then you throw in the COVID thing. Now it's almost like he's back to square one of last year. Now his skills are better. He's a little bit stronger and so forth. But the fatigue thing is even worse than it was in October when it was an issue back then. How long until he gets out of it? I'm not sure. He's going to try to wheel himself through it. So is Izzo. But Nils, I'm not an expert on this. Nobody is, I don't think. But with Bingham, you just have to hope and cross your fingers. It's been close to a month since he's had it now. And that game against Northwestern, he went out there, played about 2 or 3 minutes, and he was tired. Izzo was complaining about having guys out there walking around. I went back and watched it again. I didn't know who he was talking about. I assumed it was Bingham. When I went back and watched it again, I could think of a couple of instances in which Bingham walked to go set a ball screen top of the key, walking from the block to the top of the key, walking up there. Like Chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, just walked up there. Bingham said when he looked at the film, he didn't realize he was doing that at the time. But they don't have time for walking in that short shot clock. Secondly, Izzo likes.
But don't you think right now is the time that Julius Marble has his best game he's ever had since he's been in East Lansing? Right, he had 18 points. He played out of his mind. He's physical, and you can just see it if you watch the game. Go watch the game again. It's like. It was hit. He was hitting 18-footers.
Facing up.
He was hitting, 8, 9-foot,
hook shot,
standing hooks. He's a different player. So why don't you start him?
Yeah.
And then realize that maybe Marcus Bingham is a 16-minute-a-game player. Sissoko, I don't think they ever give him enough credit because he has a nice. I know he made a bad decision on the screen, right? Yeah. His problem is when he sets a screen, he's like Percy Snow. He's running right through you. That should have been an offensive foul. That was not on him. He's just physical and he's so fast when he does something. The referee just automatically thinks that's an offensive foul. That was not a foul. He set a screen just like everybody else did in the country.
Yeah,
right.
That was kind of. That's the only time in my life I've ever seen someone set a screen, and the ball handler rejected the screen and went the other way, and it was called an illegal screen.
Because when you look at him, you're like, he does things like that.
Now, he hustled up there. Now, Izzo wants you to hustle up there, so he ran up there, and there was some contact. But like I say, he said a screen go to the right. The guy went to the left, and they called, illegal screen. He never even said the screen. Well, he said there was contact. But to your point, I don't know. So, and not long after that.
I think you need 12 minutes out of Sissoko. I think he can give you 12 minutes, and I think Izzo's going to have to learn to trust him. But if you can play Bingham, you can play Marble 18 minutes, and you can play Bingham and Sissoko, I don't know, however many, 22 minutes between the two of them, you have your best version of yourself. Going to Hauser, Michigan State basketball is not playing Malik Hall and Joey Hauser at the 4 and the 5 at a critical juncture. It just doesn't work because you're not going to be physical. And it doesn't work. It worked against Minnesota. Okay, the next time it doesn't work against Northwestern. Northwestern was so much more physical than we were.
And they went after it. That just whetted their appetite. When Northwestern saw that, they went right at it.
Kicked our tail.
Yeah, he did.
He kicked. I mean, and he's just done it for the last 2 or 3 years. But Julius Marble, Sissoko, they could alleviate that situation. Marcus Bingham can't because he's not a physical dude.
Yeah.
But that's the reason Collins knows. Michigan State needs to be physical. That's what Andre Hudson, Antonio Smith, Zach Randolph. That's what Izzo started the whole thing. That's what it's all predicated on. Saturday was the weakest physical aspect of any Michigan State basketball game I've ever seen, and I just wanted to throw up in my mouth. I was like, that's Izzo. I can't imagine what he's acting like this week.
Yeah, and Hauser. Don't blame Hauser. He didn't ask to go in and
It's
play
not
center.
Hauser, but he's not set up for that. But he's not going to guard a 5. It's
Right.
like me, like you guarding me. I would put you down the post. I would
I don't
dunk
think
on
so.
the 8-foot rim.
I don't think
That's
so.
what I
man.
would do.
I don't think so.
I would.
I'd bite your
I'd be
kneecaps.
dunking on the 8-foot
I'm
rim.
biting your kneecaps, man.
But you're from Michigan. I'm from Indiana. I'm always going to be superior to you in basketball.
No.
That's just how it works.
Well,
Just ask Scott Skiles.
all right, probably.
I
So
was kidding.
Wisconsin. No, you're right. So Michigan State's going to Wisconsin on Friday. This guy Tyler Wall, 6'9" junior, 11 points per game. He's a big man. 5.4 rebounds, 52% from the floor. According to the stats I saw, he's only made 2 3-pointers all year, but I watched that Ohio State game last night, Wisconsin-Ohio State. Wisconsin was up by double figures the entire game this weekend. And Wall comes out and hits 2 3-pointers in the first half. That's just, Bo Ryan doesn't coach them anymore, but they pull Bo Ryan stuff. But this guy, Tyler Wall, glue guy, can score in the post, good post defender, sneaky with contact and pokes it away, gets steals. Wall's like Drew Namick on defense. And real nice back you down. I saw this guy, Tyler Wall, hit a drop step hook shot, okay, off the glass. Now, usually a hook shot is either going to be a jump hook, right, or it's going to be a Kareem sky hook, which Peplowski tried to do, right? But this guy on the left block dropped the left foot and hit a hook shot off the glass, like a George Mikan type of thing.
Wow.
Good passer. They'll do that weak
Is he
side
from
shuffle cut.
Wisconsin? Is he like all those big, like Brian Butch? And
I'll look it up. I don't know. Let me see. And, I was taking notes on him, and Izzo comes to the press conference today and says that Tyler Wall is like, the underrated guy that he really likes. And I can't remember his exact quote, but Tyler Wall's just another one of these, just pain in the rear, quality. What'd you say?
He's from Northern Michigan, man. He's his cousin.
Oh.
He's like Todd Lindemann.
Lindemann.
Judd Heathcote couldn't figure out how to get him to go to Michigan State. He talked about golfing instead of fishing, according to Izzo, and that's why he went to Indiana.
Speaking of fishing, with my ADD, I've got a little factoid for you. Today, the press conference, Chandler was out there, Michigan State's wrestling coach, and they were just talking about this kid from Mason, Michigan, a local kid, Brad Wilton, I think is his name, heavyweight from Michigan State. He closed off a victory over Indiana in wrestling on Sunday with a win at the heavyweight division, a former 196-pounder or whatever light heavyweight is. But their heavyweight got injured, so they put weight on him and moved him up to heavyweight. Anyway, he won. And he was a guy that was kind of a plugger, kind of a guy that liked wrestling and came to the local camps because he's from Mason and wanted to wrestle in college. And his dad said, hey, would you want him in the program? It's like as a walk-on or something. And Chandler was like, you bet we'd like to have him in the program. This guy, Wilton, from Mason, Michigan, turned down a scholarship to be on somebody's fishing team. And I didn't ask Chandler what school was recruiting him for fishing. Some teams have bass fishing scholarship varsity as a sport. Fishing, you know what I mean? It's out there in college fishing. And Brad Wilton.
How did I not get one?
What's that? What'd you say? How'd you
How
not
did I
get one?
not get one of them?
You didn't go to the right camp.
I'd have been the number one walleye fisherman in all of southern Ontario and West and Eastern Manitoba.
I
I
think
would have been number one ever. Lake of the Woods, I would have owned it.
Yeah, I think it's just bass fishing, my man. I don't think they get into walleye because walleye they don't exist in that warm weather down
That's
south
the
of
best
Ohio.
freshwater fish there is.
Yes, it is.
It's the LeBron James of freshwater fish.
Walleye is. It is. And but guy had a bass fishing scholarship, turned it down to wrestle at Michigan State. How cool is that guy?
That's the coolest guy ever. He owns his own bar.
He
That's
should. I want to go to that bar when he gets older and establishes one, probably in Mason, which is the county seat here in Ingham County.
He's kind of a Crowley Sullivan. He's probably the Crowley Sullivan of bass fishermen.
Probably is, man. Anyway, Tyler Wall, 6'9" junior. He's from Lakeville, Minnesota is where he's from.
Is he like next to Kevin McHale? And okay, what do Kevin McHale and Bob Dylan have in common?
Well, they're both from Minnesota.
Hibbing, Minnesota. They're both from Hibbing, Minnesota.
Really? Wow,
Yeah,
that's
when you want knowledge.
I should have known that, but I mean that's two big timers. Kevin McHale.
And I think Randy Brewer is right around the corner.
7'3". All right, so Tyler Wall was a 3-star, not in the national top 150. Had an offer from Baylor. Iowa State offered, and Minnesota offered. Northwestern, Colorado State, Drake, North Dakota, not many others. But it's interesting how you'll see. I don't know if Baylor just blanket offers people, but when you see a program like Baylor become great, like they've become. And then you see them show up as one of the only team from outside the region that offered Tyler Wall. You know what that is? That's good evaluation. And Baylor didn't get this guy, but they've built it with good evaluation across the board. That's just a side note there. But anyway, Tyler Wall, good, solid center.
Where's the coach from? Where's Scott Drew from?
Is it Indiana or Minnesota? Where's he from? I don't know.
Indiana. Come on. Dude.
I know he coached at Valpo. His dad coached at Valpo.
Indiana. He went to Butler. Come on, dude. I mean, if you want proper evaluation, you go through the greatest state there is.
Have you seen Johnny Davis at all for Wisconsin?
He's pretty good, isn't he?
6'5" sophomore. He reminds me of like a thicker, inch shorter sophomore. Kind of does some Steve Smith versatility to his game. 37 and 14 against Purdue. 37 points, 14 rebounds, 21 a game. He's only 32% from three, though. I expected his three-point percentage to be better, and he's only 43% overall. I say only. He's averaging 21 and 7.5 rebounds. Brad Davison's been there forever. 6'4", tough guy, 15 points a game, 4 rebounds. They'll post him up, run him up, that shuffle cut stuff. Brad Davison's a good, solid player, and he'll draw charges and all that stuff. But I think Brad Davison shoots too much. He shoots too much. I think they should get more shots to Wall. But I'm not here to coach Wisconsin's team. And they bring this other guy off the bench, Stephen Krall, he's a 7-footer. He's made 12 3-pointers, Brian Butch type. And Chris Vogt, who they've had for a long time, 7-foot senior, 13 minutes a game, decent lefty hook. They've got a lot of that Drew Namick length to wall you off around the rim. And this game's going to be a root canal for Michigan State, I think.
It'll be lots of fun, though. That's what we want, though. On a Friday night, you're playing Wisconsin.
9 o'clock.
How many great games have we had against Wisconsin? The best games ever. I mean,
if you like losses.
Packers. Whatever.
No, they have been. You're right.
I understand Alan Anderson missing those free throws back in the day.
Chris Hill.
Chris
Hill missed the free throws.
Okay, it's Chris Hill.
Big Ten
I thought
championship.
Alan Anderson missed something too, didn't he?
He missed a box out against Purdue that year. Maybe it was the next year.
Okay.
It cost him something.
But here's what I like about Wisconsin. You know what you're getting. They're going to be tough. You're going to be tough. Greg Gard, Bo Ryan. I think if you're a Big Ten basketball fan, this is what you live for. You're living for this game. It's Izzo versus Greg Gard, and Izzo loves Greg Gard. Izzo he's basically from northeast Wisconsin. All those Yoopers are basically from Wisconsin. That's why they're all Packers fans. So they can act like they're from Michigan, but they're really kind of northeast Wisconsin types. And it's going to be a hell of a game. That's what you're looking for on a Friday night. It's probably going to be 61-59. That's what it's going to come down to. And whoever, can make the best play at the end is going to win the game. And Tyson Walker needs to play downhill. That's the one difference. They don't have a guy like Tyson Walker. He needs to play downhill. It's not like Trice's little brother's still playing there, thank God. He was there for 30 years, and he killed us because we didn't recruit him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you have, Bo Ryan's from out east, but when you factor in Dick Bennett and the way the pack line defense, and even Rick Majerus and Porter Moser, Izzo, Greg Gard, they're all, that northern Wisconsin. You put Izzo in that same grouping, Western Upper Peninsula, and they can call it pack line defense, but they could just as easily call it the Green Bay defense or the Northern Lake Michigan defense as an homage to the Gulf Coast offense or the West Coast offense in football and the Gulf Coast offense when was Chucky doing it with the Buccaneers? I don't know. But anyway, Wisconsin puts me in a bad mood a little bit, but I appreciate what they're all about, and they're doing it again. They're 14-2. They've got more wins against Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2 than anyone in the country. They're 9-1 against Quad 1 and Quad 2. Maybe they're due for a loss, I don't know, but they're not spectacular doing it. I mean, Davis is spectacular at times, but now he's a sophomore.
But they're more physical. That's what they do, though.
Yeah,
are you going to be more
bump you
physical or not? It comes down. It's a simple game with them. Are you going to be more physical?
They'll bump you around. Now, what
Joey Hauser needs to be the best player on the floor. On Friday night, he needs to go back. He's a Wisconsin guy. He didn't even give Wisconsin a sniff. So there's a weird dynamic there, right?
Yes.
He had no interest in going to Wisconsin. Greg Gard got all kinds of heck. I mean, Bo Ryan, the Hauser brothers were not going to Wisconsin.
Right.
Right?
Right.
They both went to Marquette. It's a weird dynamic.
Joey
Hauser.
It is
Joey
strange.
Hauser is going to have to be a big deal.
And Hauser did interviews today also. Izzo, they had 3 players do interviews. Marcus Bingham, Joey Hauser, A.J. Hogard. And Izzo utilizes the media to push psychological buttons with his players. I mean, he wants them to be spokespersons for the team, for the program, for the athletic department. And everybody goes to college wanting to be an NBA player. Every college basketball player wants to be an NBA player. And these days, these college basketball players, they watch TNT or TBS and they see the post-game press conferences live, right? Whether it's Kevin Durant or whomever, they watch it. The press conference is part of being an NBA player. So these college players, they don't shy away from it. It's not easy. For some of them, it might be drudgery, but Izzo wants them out front. Hey, you want to be in the NBA? You got to do this someday. Hey, you got to, you got to go out there and learn something about yourself. Speak to the media, and it's good educational experience for those guys, in my opinion. But anyway, they had Hauser out there today because he's playing against the Badgers for that, and he received that question you just asked. Does Izzo believe that helps tune them in for battle a little earlier? Maybe so. Does it tune them in and get them a little sharper? Maybe so. Bingham missed the free throws, put him right there at the podium today. Izzo missed free throws in his last high school game of his career. He knows what it's like. Bingham owned up to it. He's like, hey, I wanted so badly to make those free throws, and I was thinking how bad I wanted to make them and force overtime so I could get my game right in overtime. He was thinking, he's thinking, I don't know what the sports psychologist would say if those are all the right thoughts or not, but his heart was in the right place. But Bingham, like I said, he acknowledged that COVID is a factor for him right now, and he's got to fight through it. But like you said, Hauser playing back home needs to come around. That doesn't mean they need to ride him and run offense toward him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they run some plays for him early on. But like you said, he's limited, and the combination of Hall and Hauser against some teams that might be okay. But I wonder if that grouping met its Waterloo a little bit in that game against Northwestern. Now, Izzo believes that if you go small, it gives you a disadvantage in terms of size in the post, and they're going to be playing Michigan coming up and Illinois, and other teams with big men won't be able to do that. Izzo's thought is, they have to guard us too. And that's true if your power forward can shoot like Erasm Lorbeck or something like that. But if Hauser's not killing it from deep, it's not a problem for them, for the opponent, to worry about Hauser and then go to work on him down low. And I think they're probably seeing that by now. But we'll see as it goes along. Nils, how you doing, man? Everything else going okay? What's on your mind with Michigan State?
But don't you think realize, though, if you're going to play Hauser and Hall together, you have to play a lot faster on offense. You're going to play like the Denver Nuggets do. You can't just sit and then try to play in a structured offense. You've got to play up-tempo. It's going to be you're shooting the ball with probably 15 seconds on the shot clock. So your defense, can't just set up. I mean, I think that's the biggest problem. If you're going to play Hauser and Hall, two of your best 3-point shooters, you're going to have to play earlier in the shot clock to take advantage of that. And I don't think that Izzo does that.
All right, what are your thoughts about the turnover problem? I mean, the Michigan State's had turnovers for years, but this year, just simple ball reversals and wild pitches like we've never seen before.
I think they're overthinking it. I think it'll all work out. I mean, that's just, it's weird stuff. Overthinking about it, thinking about turning it over. I think it'll be fine. I mean, the fact that they got beat by 2 points and they had 12 turnovers in the first half against Northwestern, I don't understand that Nance was out, but Michigan State should have won that basketball game. They haven't played anybody, that's in the upper crust of the Big Ten. I don't even know what the upper crust of the Big Ten is. Is it Illinois? Is it Purdue? I mean, Purdue got beat by a Rutgers team that's not very good. I mean, so the Big Ten is what it is. I think college basketball is what it is. I mean, here's what happened last week in the Big 12, right? I have a friend, David Cason, who's the coach at Oklahoma State. They get drilled by Texas Tech. Got drilled. They beat Texas, who's, top 15 team, and they beat Baylor at Baylor. I mean, they beat Baylor. I mean, had no business beating Baylor. So college basketball this year, there's older kids. I mean, I don't even know what we're getting into. I think it'll be a great, as long as COVID doesn't get in the way, this could be the greatest March Madness ever because we don't know what we're getting into. If you go watch Ken Palm every day, he's about 60%. I mean, I do that to see, my gambling issues. But I it's like, hey, where are you, Ken Palm? And they're like, it's this most wide open year ever. And everyone's talking about UCLA, right? We should have Michigan State had UCLA down by 14 points in the first half last year in West Lafayette. If there's any kind of crowd, probably Michigan State takes them out, wins that game. UCLA wins that game because there was no crowd in the second half. It could bring Michigan State back into it. Yeah, Gabe Brown has a bad issue. Aaron Henry doesn't box out. UCLA gives Gonzaga everything they want in that semifinal game,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So all the basketball teams, tell me what one team scares you more than the. There's no UNLV, no. Larry Johnson, Stacey Ogden, or Anderson Hunt. That, in my opinion, we're the same age. I'm 50 years old. The last UNLV team was the last great team in college basketball. I don't play with all that BS Duke crap. I'm telling you, the last great college basketball team was UNLV before the 1976 Indiana Bobby Knight Hoosiers. But, I mean, these teams this year, we're going to see weird stuff happen. It is. I mean, Purdue gets beat by Rutgers. Rutgers, is garbage, and they get beat by Rutgers. It's a weird deal. It's going to be a weirder deal as we move forward.
I thought Gonzaga was going to be everything this year. I thought they would go undefeated. They've lost twice.
Their guards are garbage, though. Their guards are not that good. Yeah.
And Purdue, losing to Rutgers. Watching that Purdue-Illinois game, Ivy is so fast, and the big guys.
Purdue doesn't have a good guard, though. That's the problem with Purdue, though.
Hunter?
That Thompson kid, he hasn't gotten any better. And then, so I had a conversation, my buddy J.D. Hamilton, he used to work for NCAA, right? He thought Caleb First was going to be freshman Big Ten of the year, right? Freshman player of the Big Ten. The best freshman in the Big Ten is Max Christie by far. No one's even close to him. Everyone's forgetting about him. Max Christie in March, what's he going to look like? He's going to look a lot different than he does, and so is Tyson Walker. This Michigan State team is set up for March. I know I'm the most biased person out there, and I'm probably not a good person to talk to about it, but I just think this team, as it moves on, Max Christie, Tyson Walker, those are two guys that can get you 35 to 40 points a game between the two of them. They can get buckets. And when in March, that's what you need.
I like your enthusiasm, and I'm not going to say you're wrong. I do like your theory about starting Marble and alleviating Bingham of some of that stress and fatigue in some ways. Although they like putting Marble in there at the 3-minute mark. Also, they may not want to totally uproot the.
How many minutes did he have? He had 18 points the other day. How many minutes did he have in the game?
He had like 17 minutes.
Okay, so this guy scored a point a minute.
Yeah. Let's see.
That's pretty good. Lloyd
he played
Free.
He played 19.
Guilford didn't even get that.
Lloyd Free. Marble had 19 points in 18 minutes, and he's done that a few times in his career. Remember against Duke last year when they beat Duke at New York, and was it Madison Square Garden they played 2 years ago, or Indianapolis or wherever it was? Remember he scored like 12 points in 12 minutes against Duke.
I think what you do with him, though, I think you bring Bingham and then Sissoko, and Sissoko's so Bingham's like Mike Tyson, and then you bring in, who's the next best heavyweight behind Tyson back in the day? Lennox Lewis? Because Sissoko's he will hurt you. And then you bring in Bingham.
Now, interestingly, aside from Baylor, who's the best team Michigan State played this year? Most people would say UConn on that particular day. UConn was long and strong and fast and physical. UConn was very good that day. I think that was Thanksgiving Day, right? Now, would you agree with that? The UConn was probably the best team that Michigan State has beaten?
But not really, because, in those, you play 3 games in 3 days, you can never figure out really what a team is, right? So that throws you all off. I can't figure out who's who. I thought Texas Tech was great, and they go to Kansas State and lose the other day by 11 points. I'm like, what are you doing? I can't figure it out right now. The whole thing's a mess. I thought Kansas was great, and then Remy Martin, he's garbage. I thought Kansas was going to be great, but they haven't gotten any better. They've gotten worse.
Yeah, that's Izzo was talking about that today. That
Auburn's the best team in the country because they got probably the number 1 player in the country, and Bruce Pearl is a better coach than people realize. Like we talked about back in the day when we played them, when we played his team at Tennessee that had a really good team when Travis Walton hit all those shots.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl is a little bit of he's been a little bit of a punchline, like a little bit of a joke in media and fan circles for a couple of decades, but make no joke about it, he is a very, very good coach. He's not gotten to the top of the mountain yet, but like you said, that Tennessee team in 2010 could have won the national championship. I think Izzo's great. I think he's a great coach, but sometimes you can get out-coached in a particular game. I think everybody would agree that Mike Krzyzewski is probably one of the top 2 college basketball coaches of all time, right? But he was out-coached by Tom Izzo in Washington, D.C. in the regional finals in the Final Four back in 2019 or whatever year that was, 2019. Yeah, Izzo out-coached him that day. It happens. Well, in the regional finals in St. Louis in 2010, I think Bruce Pearl out-coached Izzo with some of the icing of ball screens, on the side ball screens and some of those things. Really a well-coached team. And was it Draymond Green or Raymar Morgan went to the free throw line to hit those 2 free throws late to win that game? Probably a bad call. I mean, it was a hatchet job, but it was right on the ball by Tennessee. Went up, they call a foul. It's like the official was anticipating contact. It was all ball. 2 free throws, won the game. Michigan State very fortunate. Michigan State deserves it because there have been other times when they should have gone to the Final Four or further for various reasons.
You're talking about the Butler game. The Butler game forever.
That was the very next game.
And then
that was the next game when Draymond Green did not get the foul call on that one, I think is the way it turned out. But that Tennessee team.
You go back to 78 when Michigan State, that's the year I always think about. 1978, Kentucky doesn't win with Goose Givens.
That was a great Kentucky team. Magic was a freshman, great team. But you don't think about going against Kansas in Kemper Arena or going against Kenny Anderson at the Superdome in the Sweet 16.
I try. We have a few.
All right. So anyway, that Bruce Pearl, excellent coach, took Tennessee a long way, got in trouble there, revamping it now with Auburn. And that Tennessee team lost to Michigan State, could have gone either way. Michigan State lost to Butler, could have gone either way. Butler lost to Duke, could have gone either way. Duke won the national title with a very shaky team that year. That national championship was wide open, and if Caitlin Lucas had not gotten injured, Michigan State would have won the national title that year. Izzo's second.
And Chris Hill would have been on point.
Well, but
Chris Allen.
Bruce Pearl was right. Yes. Bruce Pearl was capable of winning it that year. And then Auburn against Texas Tech. No, Auburn against Virginia. Was it Auburn? Who did Auburn lose to in the Final Four when Michigan State lost to Texas Tech? Was it Virginia?
Yeah, they lost to Virginia on that horse shit call.
Watch your language. we don't do that on this podcast. But yeah, bad call or else Bruce Pearl is in the national championship game with Auburn against Texas Tech.
Oh, they would have killed him.
He's been close to winning 2 national titles, Bruce Pearl. and he could win one this year. Their shot selection is wacky though. I watched their game against Alabama, and they had Alabama. They beat Alabama. It was
Well, that's just because that game messes them up though.
It was
that
bad.
game messes them up. There's too much. It's like that's what happens. I mean, they can't get their stuff right. I mean, that game's way too fast. I mean, in a normal game, they wouldn't act like that.
Yeah, that was.
And I mean, they have dudes. They have a number one draft pick in the whole thing.
Smith.
Yeah, that guy's gonna be the number one draft pick.
Right.
Hands down, they're saying that.
And they've got experience around him. They've got perimeter shooting ability. But the shot selection could get wacky. But Bruce Pearl's a good enough coach to drive it home, and Auburn could actually do something this year. But anyway,
here's a question. I'm going to tell you. This is something I haven't even thought about. Is Bruce Pearl the equivalent of Nick Saban when Nick Saban went to LSU in 2000? And, I mean, Bruce Pearl was at Iowa. He was at College of Southern Indiana, went to Milwaukee. Like, he should be in the Midwest, but, had to get out of there because nobody would give him a job. So he went to Tennessee, did well there, got himself in trouble, got fired again, and ended up getting an Auburn job. But, are Bruce Pearl and Nick Saban very similar in how they've kind of changed the aura of the SEC in football and basketball?
No, not quite. But it's because Bruce Pearl has gotten in trouble. Like, he got kicked out of the Midwest. Remember when he basically turned in Illinois for the Deion Thomas scandal? When he was an assistant at Iowa, he was toxic. He was like, you couldn't touch him in the Midwest. And then he shows
that's
up.
why he went to Southern Indiana for all those years and he won like 2 or 3 Division II titles there.
Did he really? I didn't know that. Where at?
Yeah, at Southern Indiana.
See, that all makes sense now. He's a good coach, man. He's a joke. He's kind of a joke, taking off his shirt in the student section and all that stuff. But
he was the mascot at Boston College when they were shaving points. I mean, if you're not more in the gutter and you're a Southie guy, and you're the mascot at Boston College when you're shaving points. I mean, you invented the game. I mean, you can't be like, okay, this is how it works. I've seen it at all levels. I can't do any worse than this.
Right. You're right. Southern Indiana, 1992 to 2001. I missed the memo on that. Then he went to Milwaukee, 2001 to 2005. Remember, he beat Tubby Smith.
Good teams there.
He upset Tubby Smith in the NCAA tournament, didn't he, that one year? University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. By the way, they just call it Milwaukee now. And your people down there, Nils, I know that you're. Are you at the airport?
No, it's. I don't even get into it. Alexa is out of control.
All right, Alexa wants on the show apparently. One more thing, your favorite football team from down there, the mid-major areas, University of Texas San Antonio.
No, I like Dana Holgerson and the Utah Cougars.
Anyway, Texas San Antonio should just drop the Texas. They should just become San Antonio, just like Memphis, just like Houston. I'm saying that because
they're part of the system.
I'm saying, just like, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, Bruce Pearl. It says Milwaukee. It's not University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. Do you remember when they used to be University of Wisconsin Milwaukee? They've dropped the Wisconsin. They're just Milwaukee. Just like, Louisiana Lafayette is now just Louisiana Raging Cajuns, right? Simplify it down to the city. UTSA should not be University of Texas San Antonio. They should just be San Antonio.
They won't let them do it, though. If you're part of those systems, it's like Purdue Fort Wayne, right? They were going to be just Fort Wayne. Guess what? They're Purdue Fort FW now.
They dropped the Indiana?
Yeah.
How come? What happened there?
Oh, it's because, semantics and all that stuff and which part of the system you're in. I don't. If you're just San Antonio, it would probably be just too valuable. I mean, Jeff Traylor, the head coach of UTSA, he turned down the Texas Tech job. He turned down the TCU job. Guess what job he won?
What?
The Texas job when they fired Sarkisian.
Well, it'll be open in about 20 minutes probably.
24 months. Not 24 months. And Jeff Traylor, and you heard it here first on the Jim Comparoni podcast, he'll be the next head coach.
The guy at UTSA?
Yeah.
While we're at it, what did you think about Nick Saban and Kirby Smart at the press conference prior to the national championship game, kind of griping about name, image, and likeness and how they need to get it under control. My thought was they're both worried because they know they're not going to be able to outbid A&M and the Longhorns in the long run.
No, what they're not going to outbid is LSU and Ole Miss.
Well, I mean LSU and Ole Miss, but they don't have as much money as A&M.
Okay, exactly. And
I mean, Saban's been able to recruit and pick his roster and have great success with it, but those days are coming to an end. I mean, Alabama, they've got plenty of people that want to pay whatever they can, but they don't have deep pockets like A&M, and he knows it.
I mean, here's my thing also though. So Michigan and Ohio State, let's compare apples to apples, right? My thing is, though, if you're going to buy a house in the United States, right, the number 1 and the number 2 lenders in the country, their alma maters are what?
Michigan State.
Okay, so if I'm a recruit, I got a house, I go to Michigan State. I'm like, that's what I've been trying to talk about. I know people are like, Mills, you're crazy. And I am probably crazy, but, we have the advantage. Hey, Gilbert, hey, Ishbia. Okay, we need 0.000% interest on a 75-year note. Okay, we got it. Okay, does anybody else have that? No. I mean, no one else has it. So my thing is, because everybody has to live somewhere, right? They want to buy a house, a townhouse, a mansion. I'm just saying, there's a reason Ishbia is giving $500 to every basketball and football player at Michigan State. The 2 biggest lenders in the world are Spartan graduates. I just think Michigan State might be in a better position than the rest of the whole thing. I'm just saying, you can't tell me when I pay my rent. You can't tell me when I pay my mortgage. Well, guess what? Ishbia and Gilbert can control all that. And, Gilbert is Rocket Mortgage is on every NCAA, commercial. So I'm just saying, I think those boys in Ann Arbor, they're trying to figure this out because you got to have a place to live, and the Spartans know where to put people to live.
All right, Nils. Appreciate it, man. So Michigan State's got Wisconsin on Friday and Illinois, I think, next Tuesday. They could lose 2 games, Izzo says, and play well, and they'll know where they are. Izzo's looking forward to it. They got to find someone that can bash with Coburn, and Max Christie will be playing defense on Johnny Davis. Wisconsin will do their thing. They'll post up the right block, and the other 4 will stand around like satellites, and they make it work. Maybe they're due for a loss. We'll have to wait and see, but it'll be fun. Nils, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I really do.
My pleasure. You're the best, JC.
You're the best. All right. Thanks a lot. There he goes. Nils from the Horn. He's always a lot of fun. All right, we're going to go back to the we got to go back over here to the – I'm going to put the phone number up. We don't have many people. It's late. We're past 11 o'clock now. But thanks a lot to Don, Big Don with a big personal sponsorship early in the program. He's probably in bed by now, but we appreciate Don and the support he gives to SpartanMag.com, SpartanMag Live, and his personal sponsorship of the proceedings tonight. We really appreciate that. And let's see if I can find... let's see here. I'll do it this way. Call the show. 616-439-1158. There's that. Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, in the meantime, let's get back to the mailbag. Again, if you're just joining for the first time live, my name is Jim Camperoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Been talking Michigan State sports for the last 2 hours and 15 minutes. Doing it fun, but also serious is the way we do it. Let's go question number 3. We're only on question number 3. Brett Linwood from Ludington, Michigan. He says, do you know if there's any timetable for the new Michigan State defensive line coaching hire? Any names you can pass along? I don't know if there's got to be a timetable. They're going to want to do something. Thanks a lot, 2 count, 1 count, with your thoughts via text. Some of you guys watch, and you've got my personal text information, and that's great. Look forward to seeing 1 count up here for the 50 Fest in East Lansing coming up in a month or so, a few weeks. Anyway, timeline, I mean, it's got to get done soon because you got winter conditioning going on. It's my understanding Mel Tucker was doing some interviews last week at the National Coaches Convention. Brett Linwood from Ludington, Michigan, also asking if there's any names. No names that I know of, other than that they've been busy with it. I would not be surprised if Kevin Vickerson gets an interview. He's been very impressive. The defensive tackles at Michigan State have been very impressed with Kevin Vickerson as someone who played in the NFL and is very good at demonstrating and techniques that they feel that have helped them along. Kevin Vickerson, I think, is going to be a position coach at some point. Is the time now? I'm not sure, but if he interviews, that'll be good for him in his future also. But Kevin Vickerson, former Michigan State player, pretty valuable assistant defensive tackle coach right now. Valuable. I don't think if you call him an analyst, but anyway, he does a good job when they come to him. He can't do it on the field, but they come to him at some points for technical advice, just like they go to other gurus and so forth. Anyway, question number 3, John from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. He says, Comp, with the Badger running back transfer confirmed and the Buffalo running back transfer likely, who do you see transferring out or changing positions for Michigan State at the running back position? Now he's talking about Jalen Berger, running back transfer coming in from Wisconsin to Michigan State. The Buffalo running back, he's talking about Colorado Golden Buffaloes. Broussard, who we talked about earlier in the show, who I think's solid chance he ends up at Michigan State. That's the way it's looking. And he asks me, that's too many running backs on the rosters, or who's going to be leaving. That's true. All you have to do is look at the math, and you've got Jordan Simmons, Elijah Collins, Donovan Eaglin, Davion Prim, Harold Joyner. Then you bring in Berger and Broussard. Yeah, that's too crowded. You can't have that many people on scholarship at the running back position. A lot of those guys would command some interest in the portal, but they didn't join right after the bowl game. Now, you can join the portal anytime you want, but all those guys, they've not gone anywhere yet, which kind of surprises me. So they're all in for winter conditioning. They want to compete. They'll get to the spring. Maybe at some point, Michigan State's coaches will call one or two aside and say, look, you're a good kid. Just for you and your own best interest, if you want to play, you need to go somewhere else. I think that could happen. And Donovan Eaglin, I thought looked good in the spring game last year. And I talked to some people that were at practices last spring and in August, and they like the way that kid looks. He's got some physicality. I wouldn't be surprised if Eaglin goes somewhere and does well somewhere. It's hard to get on the field right now, but I kind of expected him possibly to play in that bowl game, but it didn't happen. Elijah Collins, we've known what he's done. He was just kind of okay in the bowl game, but he gained over 900 yards 2 years ago. Jordan Simmons, the leading rusher in 2020, just kind of okay this year when he's had chances. If either of those two falls back to third or fourth string, it's just the human condition. You would expect one of those guys to pull a Rocky Lombardi, and you wouldn't blame them. Davion Prim is going to have a real hard time breaking into the top 3 at that position. I know Michigan State gave him a look at the defensive backfield in August. I don't know if they revisited that or not, but he's going to have a hard time. So any of those guys, any of them, it's a possibility. You're asking me which one is the most likely. It's hard to say because you don't know which one is more likely to pull the trigger first, but that's the way college football is these days. And a couple of those guys are going to probably be moving on at some point. I don't know when. A little surprised it hasn't happened already. Hate to see it for them. It's a tough decision, but that's the way it looks to me. He also asks, John from Grosse Pointe asks, are the two transfers, Berger and Broussard, if they get Broussard, he says, are either of them at an elite level? And he says he doesn't even mean a Kenneth Walker level. He just means like an Edwin Baker, Langford type of, Jeremy Langford type of level. And Langford was, the fastest running back at the NFL Combine. So he was kind of elite in some ways as a college player. Are either of them at that level? I don't think Berger is. I think as a recruit he kind of was, but you look at his film and he's kind of okay. But I don't see great, make you miss and all that stuff. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I'm not sure. I think Broussard, elite is kind of a big word, but I think Broussard could be like an Edwin Baker type of guy. He's a little guy with a lot of strength like Rock Baker was, and Broussard's got that ability to plant a foot and go and really do some things. Let me see if I can find... See if I can get this. I think it's a Broussard video going on here. There he is. All right, I think this is from, I don't know if this was this year or the year before. This is some short yardage stuff, and kind of taking Blake Ezor style right up the middle on this one. Got a body lean. It's got some toughness to him. I like the short yardage stuff. I like that cutback right there. Outside zone cuts it back, weak side. Taking it to the strong side, and sometimes the daylight is the weak side. Sees that daylight, and he doesn't need 2 steps to cut. He cuts on 1 foot, which reminds me of Kenneth Walker a little bit. Boom, right there. Let's see. That's my Cosell. Sorry about that. That's my Chris Berman doing Cosell. That right foot right there, leg strength, 5'9", 190. Right plant foot, change direction, accelerate through it with the daylight, with the vision. That doesn't grow on trees. Cut, nice short yardage work right there. Short yardage again. There's that cut again. Under center, Colorado, zone, vision. Let's see, where's the bubble on this one? I can't really see. Sees the daylight. There's the daylight, and he cuts to it right now and then gets north on it. I like him as a short yardage back for a little guy. Shotgun, you got this split zone. And you can see where the daylight is, right? You wait for that split zone blocker to clear, and he's cutting. The safety fills it, and he's got some change of direction into the hole. So the short area burst, change direction, breaks a tackle. The thing he doesn't have is like that next gear home run speed like Rock Baker and Langford had, and we'll see that. But he gets into the open a lot because he's so good at the line of scrimmage. Outside zone, finds that daylight, presses the gap. Where is, who's pulling on this one? Yeah, see, these highlights are not great because I think that's a center pulling, but I'm not sure. But he's behind his pull guard. Now look at that pull blocker where he's blocked that guy, and he uses that block, setting up blocks, and that little cut there to elude the safety. This is good stuff right here. That's why he's Pac-10 Offensive Player of the Year. Uses that block, sets it up, and then that little, he's got a spin right there for an extra 12 yards. It's good stuff. Out of the backfield now as a receiver. A little change of direction on the fly. Solid. Inside zone. And he's picking up ground toward the hole while he's shimmying and shaking a little bit. So he's looking for daylight, and on a zone play, you can bust it either way. There's no lead blocker. It's not a gap play where it's like designed to, definitely has to go somewhere. He's looking for daylight. Now watch you see him change direction twice before he gets to the line of scrimmage. Now for Wisconsin, they would want him to go slower to be more patient as he goes through it. Might remind me of Anthony Davis a little bit if you remember Anthony Davis at Wisconsin. But he's looking for the daylight. They're getting too gapped up front. All right, right now he stops and sees some daylight, plants, and goes. Breaks a tackle, runs away from that guy. Here's against Stanford. What is this now? Again, daylight, spin move, balance. When he's got the vision, and then he's got that cutting ability to get to the daylight. That looks like Kenneth Walker there a little bit, doesn't it? Not all the burst, but here now he just kind of slaloms through and changes speed as he goes. Watch the change of direction here, right here. Now watch change of direction. Change. All those things. Now, this is against Arizona. He rushed for 300 yards in this game. Not this season, but last season. Arizona makes a gap error. He's got daylight, and he has no trouble seeing all that daylight. But change of direction into the daylight. Finds the daylight, and he's through it. Now, this is the one thing he lacks. He gets out here, and you'll see in his highlights that he gets run down a couple times. Quite often, frequently, on a regular basis, he gets run down a lot, which that's not the worst thing in the world that he has so many long runs that he gets caught from behind. I mean, if he didn't get caught from behind, it'd truly be next level, but these guys are going to catch him also. But he ran for 300 that night. But his ability to press the line of scrimmage and have that vision and that change of direction with some strength and some balance, that's valuable in itself. These guys catch him too. Same game, Arizona. So that's Broussard. Anyway, that's the name of that tune. So a little football there for you. Now, let's get back to the mailbag. Give us some thumbs ups. I never know what the plural is on thumbs up for us, and also subscribe to the channel here. Let us know what you think about that video. You've probably seen Bruce Hart. He's not a Spartan yet, but he's got some skills. All right, Blee Blah from Rochester Hills, Michigan says, let's talk speed. Amir Speed. What are your thoughts on the Georgia transfer? Thanks, Jim. We already talked about him earlier. I wanted to see what he did wrong in that South Carolina game when he kind of lost his job, and they beat him deep a couple times in press coverage. We talked about that earlier in the show, but he's 6'3", 211, and he looks big, but he's got quick hips, and he was up in press. Georgia's asking him to press. The Bulldogs were offhand jam. The hips look good. He got beat deep. The one deep one went for 61 yards for South Carolina. The ball was snapped at 10 seconds. They were in hurry-up mode. They were a little bit late getting lined up, but he was ready. Guy beats him. Quarterback, low trajectory. So the ball's on it right now. So he's open for an instant. The ball's there, makes a catch, and then Speed runs him down with really good speed against a really good wide receiver for South Carolina. Last name Van, and he's 5'11", kind of a Jaden Reed type of guy. And Speed was beaten by a step, and then it was just a foot race down the sideline, and he ran him down and tackled him. And he's a big dude running him down. You're like, man, that's a big dude running like that. And the quick hips, he got beat on that play, but there's some horsepower and some sports car in him. Got beat by the same guy later in the game, a 39-yard touchdown. Same thing, press coverage, outside release, inside technique, offhand jam. Got a half step on him. Quarterback, low trajectory. If he airmails a little bit, maybe the corner has a chance to run it down. But the ball was just thrown to the perfect trajectory. Corners are going to get beat sometimes. And he was a new starter and so forth. And at that program, you get beat once or twice. They got Ringo behind him, who was the number one corner recruit in the country the year before. Lost his starting job, continued to play on special teams, but was right there as a starting corner on that defense. Then the other guy, we talked about this earlier, and we also mentioned it in the article that I wrote over at SpartanMag.com about Amir Speed's decision to transfer to Michigan State today. Kendrick's his name, corner, Clemson, first team All-ACC in 2020, transferred to Georgia. How strange is that? He transferred from Clemson to Georgia. Became second team All-SEC for Georgia this year. So Speed was in position to be a starting corner, but they had this super recruit coming in and a transfer coming in from Clemson. Speed was good enough to be there. Could have started for a national championship team. And, he wants a guarantee to play more. He's going to Michigan State to get it done, and he knows Tucker, he knows Barnett, and wants to do it. So at 6'3", 211, Ron Armstrong and I were talking about that. I look at 6'3", 211, and he can turn his hips, and his tackling was good all year, graded out real well as a tackler. I'm wondering if he can play some safety. They didn't bring him in to play safety, but the flexibility, if he plays some corner and based on some motions or trades or formation changes, can he all of a sudden, shift back to a deep middle and play safety? I mean, Michigan State does that they put Cal Halliday in deep middle sometimes in a 3-deep Tampa 2 type of thing. It ends up being like a Tampa 3, which no one really calls it a Tampa 3, but they'll put a linebacker back there. You could do a deal where a corner could drop back into deep middle and morph into cover 3 because of that size and ability to convert to the run if necessary. He gives you some flexibility. Now, you got to get everybody on the same page mentally and all those things. I'm getting way ahead of it. But 6'3", 211 does not turn their hips like he does, and he can run you down. So there's some talent to work with. He's been waiting his turn at Georgia. Didn't happen. Doors open at Michigan State. I think Speed is a very interesting acquisition for Michigan State today. Ty Garland, former Michigan State player from Oak Park, Illinois, says, hey, Comp, where do you see the new transfer Speed from Georgia playing with most of his particular size? And that's what I'm saying. At 6'3", 211, that is legit size. And, Ronald Williams is a big corner at 6'2". I mean, if you go Speed and Williams at the two corners, those are big, big corners that can run. Neither of them are like completely proven players, but it's a lot of talent in the showroom right there. They got some things to work with. They got a full spring. It's going to be interesting. I wish we could go to more of the spring practices. I think I heard that the spring practices there's going to be less tackling this year by NCAA rules. Don't quote me on that, but I think I heard something like that. Question number 6, Charles from Alexandria, Virginia, says, any potential offensive line portal additions? Yes, probably one, maybe two if they find the right guys. Michigan State is looking around. We talked about it last week. They're interested in Mac Hollensteiner. Offensive tackle, played right tackle for Georgetown. Small college in small divisions, but looked at his film last week, and he looks like a Big Ten offensive lineman. Would he be a left tackle? I don't know. He's playing right tackle for Georgetown. Looks pretty good. Michigan State likes him. They're interested. He's going to be visiting here in the next couple of weeks. Would not surprise me if Michigan State gets him. In the meantime, Michigan State has shown some interest in Tyler Guyton. Played for TCU last year. 6'7", 312. Look him up. 6'7", 312. From Manor, Texas. Michigan State's interested. But I've heard that he might not have, in terms of, he may not have gotten into the portal and gotten all his transcripts in time to enroll right now. And right now is almost too late for spring practice, for spring semester. He might be able to go to other colleges, which, because he can still get into other colleges because semester's not far enough along or whatever. I hear Baylor's in there, Iowa State's in there. So that's an offensive lineman, big size, good athlete with some possibilities, but they've got their ear to the ground on some others also. Question number 7, Joe from Northville, Michigan says, can you talk a little bit about the current football staff's recruiting outlook? It seems they are really pushing hard for 4-star and above guys early. He says, for someone like himself without a lot of experience following college football recruiting, is this typical, or is Michigan State doing something it has not done in the past? End of the question. I agree. It's not typical for Michigan State to be this busy out of state with 4-star recruits and greater. You know, whenever there are 4-star recruits in the state of Michigan, of course, Michigan State's going to try to be aggressive with them from the beginning, but it's interesting that this past weekend, Michigan State had a few 4-star recruits in, including Miles McVay from East St. Louis, Illinois. And it was McVay's 3rd visit on campus, and he seems to like it more every time he's on campus. He's going to be visiting Alabama in a week or so. Big-time offensive lineman. Not the type of guy Michigan State would be impressing this much at this stage. That is new territory. Now, it's one player, but it's indicative of a broader movement by Michigan State to be involved with more of these type of players. And I think Michigan State's got a solid shot at Miles McVay. Go over to SpartanMag.com. We got stories about him. Jason Killip doing a great job covering it. Talked to him on Sunday after McVay's visit at Michigan State. Of course, the in-state guys, Cole Dellinger out of Clarkston. Michigan State pushing for him. We mentioned him earlier in the show. Jalen Thompson, defensive lineman from Cass Tech, of course. Thomas Wilcher is his former high school coach. Thomas Wilcher is now on the Michigan State staff, director of high school outreach. I think that's his title. I don't know what his title is, something like that. But Wilcher was with Mel Tucker on Friday over there at the Michigan High School Coaches Convention over the Lansing Center. A lot of high school coaches from all over the state were there. Thomas Wilcher was there seeing some old friends and so forth. But Wilcher and Tucker get along real well. Wilcher looks good and comfortable in that Michigan State gear. Was a very good running back at the University of Michigan. Great coach at Detroit Cass Tech. Really changed Detroit Public School League football. Wilcher did. Was looking for new challenges and so forth. Tucker called him up, tapped him on the shoulder. Wilcher joined the band. And he's got a lot of energy, doing some good stuff. As far as 4-star recruits go, Jalen Thompson was also here with 3 of his Cass Tech teammates, Daniel Greer, Matthew Nickens, Shamar Snow. I don't know much about those 3 guys yet, but Michigan State's been interested in Jalen Thompson for a long time, 4-star defensive lineman. And I think Michigan State's got a real good shot to get him. Now, that's an in-state guy. In terms of out-state guys this past weekend, Chance Rucker is a defensive back out of Denton, Texas. He's not ranked real high yet, but there have been some schools, big schools, showing interest in him. Now, tight end Reed McKeska, Michigan State did not offer until this past weekend, but he's a 4-star guy with all kinds of offers. And he has visits scheduled with Tennessee, Texas Tech, Baylor, and TCU in January. But that's a 4-star guy from Texas. So you have some 4-star guys from various places coming in to visit. No, that never used to happen for junior recruits at this time of year. And, next step is you have to finish on a lot of them. Try to get better than a top 15 class. Then from there, can you develop the players? How good was your evaluation? There's different stair steps to it, but the things they're doing right now, it's new territory for Michigan State in the 85 scholarship era. Probably more along the lines of the way they went out and got players in the 60s, back before there were recruiting rankings and before there was recruiting coverage and before there were a lot of things. World's a little bit better now, but before there were scholarship limitations back then when Michigan State was destroying people in the mid-60s. Question number 8 from Taylor in Los Angeles. He wants me to list my top 5 favorite Big Ten college towns. Big Ten college towns. I'll throw that out to you guys. Let you guys see what you guys think about that. I'm going to go over here to the comments and reactions area to see what kind of questions are going on over here. And we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. Did I? There we go. For those of you that took time to post your comments over here, I don't want those comments to go to waste. But I tell you what I will do. I'm going to post one more time over there on Twitter. I know it's getting late, but for some of our West Coast Spartan fans, let's let them know this nonsense is going on. What I'll do is I'll just retweet this. Computer's going a little slow right now. Let's look over here at the comments. Some of you have already gone to bed by now, but Old Tuck was here. We're going all the way back to the top. Old Tuck asking that we make the Big Toe welcome. MJ says Clemson equals Michigan State. That's optimistic. Let's see what just happened here. For crying out loud. Will Stallworth says, go green. I have to get up for work early, but in the AM, but I'll be looking forward to hearing tonight's show. So Will Stallworth is probably in bed by now. John Elke says, go green, beat Wisconsin. Brad Vashenko checking in from Austin, Texas. All right. Hayden Vischer says, is it football season yet? Ben Goff 9 says, how do you think the hiring of Brandon Jordan will help with the pursuit of higher ranked 4- and 5-star defensive linemen? We talked about that with Big Movie earlier. It's got to help, especially when they can start trotting out some of the things that NFL defensive ends have said about him. It's going to help. They'll be able to put together a really good recruiting brochure for him. He'll be able to sell a lot. Sell himself. No problem. Ben Golf says, Ben Ludington, Michigan for question above. I don't know what that means. Old Tuck says, is a talent down in Ohio? Seems like we don't sniff around much there. And the number of 4 stars is way down. That's the word. The number of 4 stars being down could be for some political reasons. I don't know. But, Michigan State's in on that Hairston kid from Lakota West. He'll be coming in a week or so, I think. And, let's see. I got some information on. Someone asked me about Hairston over in the mailbag, and also about Elliott Washington, defensive back from Venice, Florida. And Jason Killip tells me that Elliott Washington says that Mel Tucker was there today seeing him. Elliott Washington, defensive back from Venice, Florida. Someone asked me about that in the mailbag, so there's the answer on that. Michigan State was in his top 5, and then I think Michigan State eased off a little bit, but Michigan State back in there with Elliott Washington, DB, corner from Venice. Michigan State's in on some other corners too. Michigan State's after some good ones, but at some point they have to decide who they want to go after. Because I'm not saying they're in a position where they can choose, but I think they can recruit from an area of strength right now. James Poe says Michigan State wrestling is in top 25 now. I'm not surprised. They beat Purdue on the road Friday, and Purdue was number 11 in the country. So Michigan State is like 7 or 8-1 now. They've got Penn State coming to town this weekend. Penn State number 1 in the country in wrestling. Not going to beat Penn State, but Michigan State wrestling heading in the right direction, doing some good things. And I don't know. I've heard about times when Michigan State wrestling was great back in the 60s. I've never seen it, but I would like to witness that someday, like a top 10 duel in East Lansing, which hasn't happened in forever, right? That would be exciting. And you see what some programs do around the Big Ten for home meets and some of the dry ice and smoke machines and blasting flames and all that, making it more of a show. I'd like to see what Michigan State could put together over there at Jenison on a big top 10. MJ says Mangum over Gross. You know, you got Jaden Mangum coming in as, I think, a real good safety prospect. 6'3", good hands, good athlete. You know, Gross is a shorter guy. Mangum, can he play close to the line of scrimmage like Gross? We're going to find out. Mangum is on campus now. He's going to be in spring practice this spring. Gordon Tenona says Georgia has spring football. The elite schools have indoor facilities for practice, all from private donations. Yeah, high school football is big in Georgia, and it's reaped a lot of talent. And one of the byproducts of that is the Bulldogs winning a national title. I mean, what Georgia has in terms of talent base, population, and everything, they simply didn't have in the 70s, 60s, and 50s. It's blossomed, it's grown, and then on top of that, the infrastructure support there, the high schools, and those high schools in Georgia hiring very good high school coaches, and now Georgia went from being a sleeping giant to a giant. You know, back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, South Florida with the Hurricanes, sleeping giant. Florida State, sleeping giant. Gators, sleeping giant, all at the same time, state of Florida, right? Then Alabama did it with Saban. Tail wagging the dog down there, got that done. LSU was a sleeping giant until Saban woke it up. Now, economic factors. I don't know if Jimbo Fisher's going to get it done. I doubt Sarkisian's going to get it done at Texas. But name, image, and likeness, the elite sleeping giant level, my forecast is A&M and the Longhorns. What impact that has with Texas going to the SEC, I'm not sure, but I think that's the next sleeping giant awakening. A&M's never won a national title. Georgia just got one. They're not going to be going away because they've got a lot of great things too. Can they pay like A&M's going to pay? I mean, they're saying A&M paid $30 million for that recruiting class. I mean, that's ridiculous, but a lot of money down there. John Elke says, will Keon Coleman and or Malik Carr see any playing time in basketball? No. You know, mop-up time. They are just learning. Now, Keon Coleman, I like his potential as a defensive role player, but I don't know if he's interested in doing that long term. I just watched him a little bit today. They were serious about it. They were working. Carr was bumping around pretty good in the post. But like I said, Carr is not jumping, leaping as well as he did when he's in high school because he's got all that tight end weight on him now. But they were in it. They're trying to help. And I don't think Izzo's going to close the door on those guys. But it takes a while. It took Matt Trannon a while. It took Keebler a while, and he wasn't a football player. He was a tennis player. Not a Michigan State tennis player, but it takes a while to go through the whole process. It's the process for walk-ons, too, and they are walk-ons. Now, will they have the walk-on mentality? Will they have a walk-on mentality like a Colby Wallenman to just wait his time, bide his time with no guarantees? That can be hard for people that think of themselves as stars, quite frankly. For instance, Malik Carr playing center. He was not really a center in AAU. He's more of a power forward, wing forward type of guy in basketball. Is he better than Peter Nwoke right now? Peter Nwoke, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Peter Nwoke is walk-on freshman for Michigan State right now, 6'7", originally from Nigeria, from Orchard Lake St. Mary's High School. Is Malik Carr better than Peter Nwoke? No. Is anyone asking me when Peter Nwoke is going to be playing? No. So there's your answer. Everybody gets excited about the football players playing basketball. And good for them for trying, but people don't realize how good these college basketball players are. Even the ones that struggle. I mean, you guys know Pierre Brooks was pretty good in high school, right? I mean, if you guys got out and shot around and went up and down with Joey Hauser at the YMCA for an hour and a half, you would be blown away how good these guys are when they're not surrounded by 9 other great, not being defensed by other great players. Cameron Trigg says, what transfer offensive lineman are we targeting? And I think we should be in on the defensive end TCU transfer or John Mathis. Offensive lineman, we talked about that a moment ago. That Hollenstein guy from Georgetown and Guyton, but I'm not sure everything's going to line up for Guyton. MJ says, I would take Keon or Care over Bingham. Keon Coleman, Malik, or Carr, I guess he means. He says he would take Keon or Carr over Bingham. You can do that, but you would lose. MJ says, sorry, but Bingham is worst MSU starter ever. You can say that, but you're wrong. But thanks for watching the show. Don Straight thinks once again. Keith Tunstall says, why did Ron Burton leave, or was he asked to step down? I got a lot of respect for Ron Burton. He's done great things at Michigan State. Good professional guy, but it's just kind of time to move on. I think Tucker agreed with that also. So it's somewhat mutual, but everything with Tucker, it's all about trying to upgrade all the time. But I got a lot of respect for Ron Burton. He did great things at Michigan State. Hayden Vischer, thanks. Darian Kendrick, couldn't remember that name. MJ was excited to see Big Movie, but MJ, I just kind of made fun of your basketball observations there a moment. And I don't mean to disrespect you. I was just trying to create more respect for Bingham out of that a little bit. Now, Bingham was very good in October, November, and early December. He was a big reason why Michigan State got off to a good start. So, MJ, I was just playing with you. Hope you're okay with that. He says, what do I think about the Jordan impact? Jordan being the new defensive ends coach. That's new territory. That's outside the box hiring. And there's a lot of things that Michigan State is doing that I think some of Michigan State's peer group around the region, around the Midwest region, is looking at and saying, dang, that's a good idea. Dang, they're doing a good job with that. Dang, they got that guy too. Dang. I think Michigan State's producing a lot of dangs in the opposition. I think Jordan is another one. Gavin Keene says no more Kimbrough. What happened to Kimbrough, he's asking. Kimbrough did not start in the bowl game. Lowry did, right? And Kimbrough played about 17 snaps. I think Kimbrough started 7 or 8 games this year, or 9, but I'm not sure why he tailed off at the end of the year. As we get into coverage of spring practice, that's something I'll have to ask about, although Tucker is not real revealing on some of those things. Parker K says people will bash Kimbrough, but I think he's got all the tools for a good corner. We'll see. I think so. He could be a good corner. I think he played some good corner this year. And I'm saying that, but Michigan State was dead last in the country in pass defense and dead last in the Big Ten in total defense. We've been through all of that. Keith Tunstall says Ronald Williams might move to safety, ? No, we're just speculating on that. Just speculating. Whether he could. He's got the frame to do it. Speed's got the frame to do it. Just speculating. We've not heard anything along those lines. But Michigan State, right now, they've got a little bit of a shortage of safeties, and they've got a little bit of a surplus of corners, and some of those corners have safety size. So it makes you wonder. MSU Hunter Spartan says Spartans need to split the next 2 games or they could sink into the abyss. Joey Hauser needs a wake-up call as well. I don't disagree with that. I don't know about abyss. if they lose these two. I mean, things can change in the Big Ten. Anyway, top 5 Big Ten college towns. I put that out there. Taylor from Los Angeles asked me that question. I don't have a top 5, but I've got a comment on a couple. Alex W says Penn State #1 easy. Nobody else. UM is the worst stadium, says YT Sparty. YT Sparty says PSU fans are nice. Connor Theodorakakis says, any thoughts about Malik Hartford or Elliott Washington and where we stand? Elliott Washington, Michigan State was in the top 5. Talked about him from Venice, Florida. He's the nephew of Serdarian Adams. Serdarian Adams is still involved with Michigan State. Still involved with those Michigan State Spartan Dogs down in the state of Florida. So Michigan State's in there with Washington. And Elliott Washington, like I said a moment ago, Mel Tucker was at Venice High School to see Elliott Washington and others today. So Michigan State busy with Elliott Washington. Where they stand, I mean, there's a lot of laps to go there. I think Michigan State had eased off the gas pedal there a little bit, but Mel Tucker being there today, day 3 on the recruiting trail, that kind of speaks some volumes. Jason Killip, our fine recruiting anchor at SpartanMag.com, passed along that information to me a moment ago. So I would imagine Jason's going to have information on that in his nightly recruiting roundup tonight, or maybe a story on Elliott coming up. Elliott Washington is a 4-star corner, 6'1", 190, Venice High School. He's a 4-star. He's ranked number 58 player in the state of Florida. He's got an offer from the Gators and the Seminoles and the Georgia Bulldogs and Miami Hurricanes and many others. Now, he visited Michigan State in June. He also has offers from Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and a lot of people. Are those committable offers? I would assume many of them are. But Michigan State's in there with Elliott Washington. Like I said, nephew of Serdarian Adams. As far as Hartford goes, from Lakota West, he's one of the Ohio guys that Michigan State is after, and he's visiting Michigan State the weekend of January 29th. I think Michigan State to have all of their muscles flexing and all of their pistons firing and all their cylinders firing. I think Ohio needs to be a cylinder for Michigan State. Anytime Michigan State's had a good program, a good team, there have been a lot of Ohio guys being a part of it. Mel Tucker's an Ohio person. People do say talent is down in Ohio, but there's still players there. Michigan State should be able to go down there and have some pull. The players that Michigan State's been recruiting, I don't have a problem with any of them. I mean, evaluation looks good, the energy's good, and recruiting, I don't have a problem with any of it. It just seems like Michigan State should be able to utilize that cylinder. If you're not getting Ohio going, then you've got a 7-cylinder engine only operating. You've got an 8-cylinder big block only operating with 7 cylinders, in my opinion. So Hartford's in there. I'll be curious to see if more happens in that state going forward as well, but there have not been a lot of indications just yet. All right, so Taylor from Los Angeles was asking me who are my top 5 college towns in the Big Ten. Well, I don't know if I've got a full 5, but and in the meantime, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're just checking in. But I don't know if I'd rank them, but I mean, Madison, Wisconsin's a great town. It's a city and it's a college town. The campus is great. The lake is cool as heck, right? The lake gives you some scenery there a little bit in the summer. Ice fishing in the winter, if you're into that. I know you got to be a little kooky to like your ice fishing, but if I lived there, I'd be doing some of that. Although ice fishing should kind of be in the woods somewhere a little further from human beings. That's right in the middle of things. But got the bluegill there. I don't know if there's any crappie in that lake or not. But Madison's just got so much to offer. And I would characterize game day, or just in general, Madison, Wisconsin, in general, there's a jolly aggressiveness about them. There's a little bit of a Chicago influence in Madison, Wisconsin. There's the bar thing going on game day. It feels more like an NFL thing a little bit. But there's action, but it's the jolly action with people with their goofy overalls, the jump around, the fill me up buttercup stuff. Wisconsin's pretty cool. It's a college town. It's in a city, not too big of a city. I like Minneapolis a lot. It gets a little too cold up there. And I'm a cold weather guy. Minneapolis is a cool city, underrated city. A little too cold though. But the campus in Minneapolis just kind of gets lost a little bit more. It's not a college town. Minneapolis is a town by itself, obviously. So I wouldn't care. I'm not going to put Minnesota up for consideration with this. But I got Madison up there. I got State College, Pennsylvania up there, just me and my own taste. It is a college town. You might say it's in the middle of nowhere. I don't mind that. Mountains, beautiful. I like that. They got some trout streams around there. Me personally, just talking me personally, I'm a strange cat. That's why I still have Lake Huron ranked number 1 in my Great Lakes power rankings, ahead of Lake Michigan. All you people in Ludington and Chicago and New Buffalo, you're all mad at me all the time in Traverse City. You're mad at me all the time. Those of you that live in the Detroit area that have cottages up on Lake Michigan or Crystal Lake around there, you're all mad at me because I got Lake Huron number 1 in the Great Lakes power rankings still for 3 years. Lake Michigan could overtake them at some point if the right things happen. Just part of it is just what I experienced in my life. You know what I'm saying? Better walleye fishing in Lake Huron. Also, I think the people are nicer over here on this side of the state. Just calling it like I see it. I love Sleeping Bear Dunes, but I love Mackinac Island a little bit more. And Mackinac Island technically is in Lake Huron. Lake Michigan is prettier. Got the dunes over there just because of the prevailing winds. Have put the sand up that way. The color blue of Lake Michigan when you're at the Sleeping Bear Dunes is an amazing color. It's a different color than Lake Huron, and those are definitely bonus points for Lake Michigan. But Lake Huron is still number 1 right now in the Comparoni Great Lakes Power Rankings. I got Madison, Wisconsin first, State College, Pennsylvania number 2. Ann Arbor's a good town. I mean, you guys are going to be mad about that, and maybe the people there suck, a lot of them. A lot of high percentage suckageness in the people. So if I'm going to have the type of people in Lake Huron, if I have that as a reason why Lake Huron is number 1, the people, then that I guess knocks Ann Arbor out of the top 5. But Ann Arbor's got good restaurants. The downtown area is kind of live. It's good. There's things to do. There's some good things there. But yeah, there's people though. Not all of them are bad. I know one guy, my friend Mark lives there. Mark is cool. Mark went to the Naval Academy, though. But anyway, there's a couple nice people there. So any of you that want to talk about what your favorite college towns in the Big Ten, go ahead and vote. I got Madison and State College, and I don't have anything else after that. Iowa City always kind of surprises me when I'm there. There's a little more going on there than I normally give Iowa City credit for. Does Lincoln, Nebraska count? I mean, Lincoln is it's a city. It's a city. I like that stadium in Lincoln, though. I think it's one of the more underrated stadiums in the country. All right, question number 9, Joe Ski Sparty from West Bloomfield. He's got a bunch of questions. Joe Ski Sparty says, what would you set the over-under for the number of 4-stars in the 2023 recruiting class? We talked about this last week. Did I say 8 maybe? 8 would be high. 8 would give you a top 13 class. I'm going to say 8. Question number 2, what is the status of Blake Buter, Matt Carrick, Tyler Hunt, and Noah Harvey? I asked someone on the inside about Tyler Hunt today, and as far as he knows, he thinks he's still planning to be part of the team. They could use him. They need him at tight end. Blake Buter, I don't think so. I think I asked about him a month or so ago, and when you talk about year number 6 for someone who's not going to play in the NFL, that's just, they start thinking life after football a little bit. So I've been hearing no on Blake Buter, but who knows? Maybe after a few weeks off, he might change his mind. Buter played more near the end of the season and kind of hit his ceiling a little bit. He's been a good contributor, good Spartan. It's nice he's got that bowl championship ring this year, but he may have hit his ceiling. And that skeletal wear and tear, year number 6 for someone who's not going to play professionally, maybe life after football is what's next for him. They'd like to have him back, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm thinking less than 50% there. Matt Carrick had that season-ending injury, and he put out that social media tweet in October or November saying he was expecting to be back, and that's a guy that was a backup right guard this year and graded out real well when he was in there. I thought he played better this year than he did the year before as a starter. Now, maybe it's easier to play better when you're playing fewer snaps. I don't know. You also asked about Noah Harvey. I think Noah Harvey is done. He could come back for a sixth year. Maybe he'll seek a sixth year elsewhere, but it's my understanding that they're moving, that he's not in the picture for next year. Now, I've not heard that from official sources, but that's just what I've heard from some other sources. All right. Okay, he says if Michigan State adds running back Jarrett Broussard out of Colorado with Berger, Chris Bogle, Jacoby Winman, Aaron Brule, and Amir Speed, all talking portal here, he says, do you think the 3 remaining slots are all slated for offensive linemen? I think 2 for offensive linemen. 1 for sure, and I've heard 2 if it's the right guy. So I don't think all 3 are offensive linemen at this point. Question number 9, Sola from Westland, Michigan says, do you know if we are pursuing a starting level safety in the portal? I feel if we could address our starters at safety this year and have 2 proven guys, it would help this defense immensely. Good question, Sola from Westland, Michigan. Safety, we talked about this earlier. Could Speed possibly move to safety? Could Ronald Williams move to safety? Have I heard that they're looking at a safety? I've not heard that. It would not shock me. But maybe they feel like they've got the pieces in the defensive backfield right now. And they've got a shortage at safety. You're right. They've got a surplus at corner. A couple of those corners are big. That's just the math. Would not surprise me if they go after safety. I agree with you that they could use one. But with Xavier Henderson having come back, maybe that's not a priority right now. Would not shock me, but I've not detected any talk like that. All right, we've been going for 3 hours. Let's go back over here. That's all the questions I can get to right now for the mailbag. I need to make sure that I get to the bottom of those mailbag questions because a lot of you guys post questions, and I appreciate you guys taking time to post those questions over at SpartanMag.com, Underground Bunker Message Board, the Church of What's Happening Now for Michigan State Sports. But I don't get to all of them. What I need to do is have another podcast later in the week and get to those. Anyway. James McIntyre. Looks like a good Navy sailor right there. Good young man. He says, if I recall correctly, Trannon was a top 100 basketball recruit coming out of high school. Yeah, you're right. He was. He was a basketball first guy. He was like a national top 40, top 30 guy in 9th or 10th grade. He was a big-time basketball recruit. Was kind of an inside power type of guy. You know what Trannon became. He needed to have taken his game outside to the perimeter when he stopped growing a little bit. He wasn't quite tall enough to I don't know. He did at 6'7", he wasn't quite 6'6". He wasn't quite skilled enough to be like an NBA, obviously NBA prospect, small forward. So he was kind of guided toward trying the football route. He came to Michigan State, set the school record in receptions, but wasn't quite an NFL receiver either. I think he might have been an NFL player as an outside linebacker in a 3-4. I think he was tough on defense, and that might have been from a physical and skill aptitude level, that might have been his best move. Basketball, though, if he would have went straight basketball, he may not have made the NBA, but I think he could have played in Europe, and you can make real nice money over there. So if I had been his agent or financial advisor when he was 16, I would have said, stick with basketball, focus on basketball, specialize in basketball, and you'll probably play in Europe, and that's okay, and you can have a nice long career there and make good money. That's what I would have told him. He didn't end up playing sports professionally. He's doing well in Arizona. I don't know what he's doing, but I've heard he's doing pretty solidly out there. But there's a lot of Matt Trannon fans out there for sure. He was a tough guy. All right, I think we're about done. What do we have here? People, what do we have? Talking more about Bingham and the COVID situation. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think they'll probably do it. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I was remiss in pointing out all the factors about Matt Trannon. Somebody mentioned that people forget about Matt Trannon. He played both. Yeah, he did. He was the obvious one. He started for a Final Four team. He was great. But he was still just like a great role player. I mean, you may recall, even though he was a top 100 basketball player at some point, Keith Tunstall making this point. He says, why do people keep forgetting about Matt Trannon? He played football and basketball. He helped Michigan State beat Duke and Kentucky to get to the Final Four. Selective amnesia. Well, he was a very good role player, and they were better when he came back. But remember, they didn't run plays for Trannon. He was a defensive player and a little bit of an offensive rebounder, got fouled, made free throws. But he was a role player for a team that was low on interior talent. You had Paul Davis, was Jason Andreas part of that team, Delco Rowley. They were low on big men. So when Trannon showed up, they needed him, and they worked him into being a role player. But, people thinking that a football player is going to come in and score 15 points, no. So Trannon helped at that time with that team. And he could play defense on mismatched power forwards, which is useful. But I'm not sure he could have gotten many minutes on other Michigan State Final Four teams. But he was part of that team. You're right. But my point is, he's the ultimate example, but he was a role player. Can someone become a Kenny Goins? Kenny Goins didn't play football, but he was a walk-on. He's the best walk-on that Izzo's had. So, Trannon, I mean, you look at his basketball stats. I don't know if they're in here. I don't know if I can find them. And he was on the team for a year or two before he started getting playing time. All right. He played 3 years. So he averaged 4.6 points in his third year. Played 22 games. So his first year he played he started 10 games. So he started 10 games in 05-06. Oh, that was the year he started in 06. See, that was the year after the Final Four. So he played in 05, and that was not his last year. His last year was the next year, when they had Paul Davis and Delco Rowley, and Paul Davis was a very good player, but always worried about getting in foul trouble because he didn't have any depth around him. And he started 10 games alongside Paul Davis. In 05, when Michigan State went to the Final Four, Allen Anderson was the starting power forward, believe it or not. So Trannon was coming off the bench. Anyway, Matt Trannon, you might remember him as some superstar savior, but his first year, he averaged 1.2 points per game, which is a little less than Matty Sissoko, I think. Okay? Just trying to define terms here. His second year, Trannon averaged 2.3 points per game. His third year, he averaged 4.6. He did start 10 games, but we're talking role player, 4.6 points per game. So don't, you talk about selective amnesia. Don't pretend like Matt Trannon was Rick Barry or something. Or, it's not like he was even Adam Wolf or something like that. He came in and he was an important part of a very good team in 05. Very good team. 06 team lost to George Mason in the first round in Columbus in 06. That team never got off the ground. So Trannon was a role player for a team that needed that role. This current team, Keon Coleman is quick. If he focused on basketball, I think he's got the athleticism. He could play defense at this level. That's to begin with. Has a lot to learn. YT Sparty's talking about Andre Rison. Says Rison didn't even run any fancy routes. He just blew past the opponents. We just threw it up in the end zone and he'd be there. MSU Hunter Spartan makes a good point. He says Trannon was bigger and physical, and he worked out with the basketball team during the summer. He didn't just walk on. That's a good point also. And Izzo made the point that Trannon didn't begin with basketball until he'd been on campus for a couple of years. I think Trannon might have been a non-qualifier for a year also. All right. I think I might have hurt Keith Tunstall's feelings. I think he gave me a thumbs down. I apologize about that. All right, I think we're about done. I appreciate everybody. Yeah, I guess I didn't put. I posted it. We didn't get any. All right. Anyway, that'll be it. I appreciate everybody posting. I can't look at all of them. I've looked at a lot of them. Appreciate everybody posting. Everybody. All right, so Marco Rolo says, he's got a clarification here. He says, I didn't mean Brule or Wyndham over Halliday or Crouch. I just meant one of the two will start opening day. Maybe one a defensive end. Good stuff, Jim Comp and Moop. Okay. Brule, I don't know if he's a defensive end. I don't know if he's got that kind of size, but point well taken. Spartan MD says, I don't always agree with Nils, but love his strong opinions. That's why, yeah, Nils is thought-provoking, that's for sure. All right, man. This has been fun. Looks like Northwestern gave Wisconsin a game. That was tonight. I hope that's on Big Ten Plus. I'll put it on my laptop and go back over it again. Big Ten Plus has been letting me down. Not every game is on there. I'm not sure why. But I'll try to catch up and take a look at that one. I still have not watched the Michigan-Illinois game. I've got work to do. Anyway, coverage of Spartan, of Izzo's press conference today. I think Paul Konerdyk's got some notes coming up on that. Anyway, SpartanMag.com, we're covering it all the time because there's a lot of news going on all the time, a lot of things to analyze. Didn't talk any hockey tonight. No questions on hockey. That's okay. They've lost 4 in a row. I thought they had Wisconsin beat in game 2. They're up 2-1, and one of the Krieger twins had a blow to the head, 5-minute major, and boom, boom, 2 power play goals. They're down 3-2, and they lose to the Badgers, get swept. That's not a good one because they swept Wisconsin earlier in the year. Michigan State was on the verge of getting ranked top 20, which doesn't mean you're going to be in the tournament. But every time I think they're making some progress, it's a couple steps back. Who do they have this weekend? Ohio State. They need to take 2. And, man, it's just fun living around here with some of the sporting options. Football, basketball. Keeping an eye on the women's basketball. Susie's had COVID. Season's not gone very good, but that's that. But hockey, I want to see some top 10 hockey games at MUN. It's not like I'm rooting for Michigan State hockey. Well, I guess I am. But I'm not like, pom-poms. I just want to be able to go over there and cover some big hockey games. I want this to be an NCAA tournament team. Everybody does. And I think if they keep working their plan and planning their work, I think they'll get there eventually, chart the course, keep working it that way, and they'll get there. I think the Big Ten is rough in hockey is what it is. Every single weekend is tough. The thing about it is with the Big Ten in hockey, I have to go back and look at it, but when you've got all the Big Ten teams together, like 10, 12 years ago, when the CCHA was around and the WCHA, you were more likely to get Wisconsin and Minnesota in the tournament and Michigan and Michigan State, or Michigan and Ohio State, or Michigan and Notre Dame, however you want to slice it. In other words, you were more likely to get 4 Big Ten teams. Notre Dame's a Big Ten hockey team. You're more likely to get 4 teams in the NCAA tournament. But now that they're all together, you're only likely to get 2, maybe 3. It's harder for Big Ten teams to get in the NCAA tournament now because they're all combined. If the BCS, if the college football playoff stayed at 4 teams, the SEC would learn that it's harder to get teams in it with Texas and Oklahoma because of numbers. Anyway, Big Ten hockey, it's been good because every weekend is entertaining, and it's good for the Big Ten network, but it's bad in terms of it restricts the number of Big Ten teams that can make the NCAA tournament. Anyway, appreciate everybody checking us out. We'll be back next week. Maybe one of these days we'll be doing this twice a week, going shorter. Maybe once the games stop, maybe we get in the off season, we'll do something like that. I appreciate everybody checking us out. I even appreciate the dude that gave me a thumbs down. Thanks for watching. Thanks for disagreeing. You're always free to disagree with me. I've been wrong many, many times. I don't try to convince anyone to agree with me. I just call things as I see them, throw it out there, and I encourage everybody else to make up their own minds on anything we talk about. Anyway, appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate support for SpartanMag.com. Go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. We're always welcoming new subscribers over there. Check us out all the time. Underground Bunker Message Board, SpartanMag.com, plus the coverage over there. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a Magger. You'll be happy you did. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. SpartanMag.com.